We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to take the law, the enforcement. But at the end of the day, each and every member should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer, the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is March 23rd, 2016, and we're coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you for listening to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights, Tuesday through Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, and you can listen live on Spreaker.com and nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. And to the archives, all the archives we've ever done are on Spreaker. So if you want to go back to even the first show, you can get that on Spreaker. You can also still get, I think, up until I got off of Blog Talk Radio, you could get it there too, but might as well just go to Spreaker. It's better to go there because it has all of our shows up to now because I'm on Spreaker and I transferred everything. And we also have archives on YouTube, so you can listen to it there. It posts immediately after the show to YouTube, Twitter, SoundCloud, Tumble, as well as I believe we're on Stitcher as well. I had an issue with Stitcher and I fixed it. So I think Stitcher's working also. I don't know. That's on an RSS feed, so I don't know if it posts immediately after the show. But all the other applications are linked to Spreaker. And we'll actually be talking about this later in the show because tonight we're going to be talking all about how to start a Liberty podcast. And that, of course, is just based on my experience and the experience of Shire Dude, who will be joining us later in the show, who's done a few different shows and has experience with other people's studios as well, and has seen, being in New Hampshire, everybody has a podcast. And he will be joining us also to give his opinion, and he is going to start up his own solo show, from what I understand, at some point also. So we will be getting into all the different applications and all of that fun stuff. So we promote here on Nonpartisan Liberty for All, we promote the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom, as well as exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force and violence. And if I see fucking one more story on ISIS and some idiot congressman said, oh, this was really an attack on America because where they were, they went to a place where Americans go in Belgium. Okay, because you mean to tell me that there are supposedly there's all these Muslim terror cells here, right? That 4 of them or 5 of them can't get together without them finding out and just shoot a place up? Really? Why does that not happen? And it's not because of the fucking NSA. It's not. It's because it's a bunch of bullshit. First of all, it's being run by the CIA. I think there are real terrorists out there who have legitimate gripes. I mean, half of ISIS, well, I can't say for sure half. I know a percentage of ISIS is just doing it for the money. I mentioned before, I've seen interviews where they said, why are you part of ISIS? They don't give a fuck about the jihad part of it or the hate America. They're like, hey, I need some fucking money. I'm doing it to get paid. And that was straight out the fucking guy's mouth. So how many other people are doing it for the same reason? And there's just so much shit about ISIS. We've talked about it before. We'll probably talk about it more a little tomorrow and how it relates to the show. But we're going to talk about how the U.S. I kind of changed the show topic for tomorrow. I've been pushing this topic off regarding the police, and we haven't talked a lot about the police and going beyond killings and all the other stuff that they do. And I really want to be prepared for it, and I feel like it's a very important show, and I haven't really put enough time into it, so I keep moving it forward. But I did do some research into East Germany, and it seems like in some ways the U.S. is worse. Now, of course, you're not going to, well, who knows, but supposedly you're not going to get shot for, I mean, there's no wall yet, but you know, who knows when the wall's there, you'll get shot for jumping the wall to get to Mexico, to get out of the United States. They want to, of course, build a big wall, not just Trump, other people as well. And there's a bill that's been passed, I think, in 2006. People forget about the fact that you're going to have Border Patrol all over there, which is going to create more of a police state. And they're going to keep you in just as much as they're going to keep people out. So at some point, you might want to get the fuck out of here. And unfortunately, there's just really nowhere to go. You could go to a place that maybe is better in some areas, but worse in others, and maybe doesn't enforce their laws. But it's all the same shit because they're all under governments. Somebody said this, and I had said this before they did, and not that they got it from me or anything, because they don't listen to me, but that if it was some other country, I don't knock the United States for who they are. It's the government. And if there was another country who was more powerful, they'd be doing the same shit the United States is doing. It doesn't matter who the country is. It's just like it doesn't matter who the president is. If they have that much power and money and a military that has all these weapons and is that powerful, it doesn't matter who the country is. They're going to be doing the same shit. So it's not the United States per se that's the problem. It's government and it's power. And why people can't put that together, I don't know. But it's obvious. So I forgot who made that statement, but they made a statement like, yeah, if it was another country who had the power of the United States, they'd be doing the same thing. And you look throughout history and you can see it as well. So, fortunately tonight, sorry, I was just thinking about, I want to get off the topic because I was going to say that we're going to have an actual show that is somewhat positive, and not a negative, wanting to leave the country or be depressed or realize that you're nothing but a slave to the government or whatever, that we were, and we are going to do a show that is just a show about podcasts. So, of course, the motivation for the podcast comes from that, because we are going to talk specifically about Liberty Podcast, not any other type. And I'm not really familiar with other types of podcasts. And there's also one of the things I talked about before, and I talked about it with Brian Sovereign of Sovereign Tech. He does a podcast about technology and things like that, which relates very easily to freedom because of spying and things to try to block spying and things like that. And I had him on the show. I actually had him in the studio with his significant other, Stephanie Murphy, and she actually gave me a nice compliment about the studio. I don't remember the exact words, but it was like something to the effect of, compared to a lot of studios, it's, pretty nice and put together. And I'm totally paraphrasing because I'm more than paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly what she said. But she did compliment the studio, which from her, somebody who's now a voiceover actress and has done a bunch of her own shows, that's a big compliment to say, I mean, what does it really mean? I just got information from other people and kind of put my studio together, and I'm kind of a neat freak when it comes to my studio, so it's nice. And the way I designed, I have a L-shaped table and stuff like that, and I have a nice futon like couch. Actually, the futon is pretty cheap, but I put like blankets and pillows on it, like pillows, so you could sit with your back against a pillow on top of a blanket. And I think that's where they had sat. So I made it as comfortable as possible. And I have, we'll get into this later, but point being that, it's not like, oh, I'm a genius, I created this great studio. It's just from learning from others. And I mean, I obviously I pick up things quick, and that's kind of the whole reason why I have the job I do, and I even am successful at all. I mean, not that I'm not that successful, but I'm able to pick things up pretty quick, and especially when it comes to systems and technology and things like that. But at the same time, it's not like it takes a genius to put together a fucking studio. You can go on YouTube and view videos, which I did, and then kind of filter out what you like and do research at the same time. But it's all out there, so it's not like it just came in my head and oh, this is how you do everything. I mean, obviously, I did my own research on everything, and the research is pretty easy to do because it's all out there. But that was a nice compliment coming from her, and it was a pleasure actually to have them here and to say, when it comes to the quote unquote, I guess, liberty movement, to have them actually be willing to come to my house, because my studio is in my house, and do a show live from my studio was great. That is something that it's like, and I don't look at them this way like I'm in awe or anything like that, and it's not a knock on them. I'm just not like that in general. When I was younger, I was. But it's kind of like having a semi-celebrity in the sense of when it comes to podcasting and internet and freedom radio. And they were on Free Talk Live on Sundays. They hosted. So, they're a pretty big deal in the liberty movement, and I always want to say quote unquote liberty movement. So to have them, to know them and have them actually come to my house and come in my studio, it's something that makes me feel somewhat accomplished, even though I'm not getting as many listens as I'd like and things like that. And I don't think I'm anybody, I'm nobody special when it comes to internet radio or anything. But, to have a lot of these people that have come on the show, some of them have come on because of other people, but some of them have actually come on because I asked them to, and then they came on again because they liked coming on the show, or they thought I did a good interview, or they had respect for me. So that is, I think, the one thing that I can take some pleasure in, knowing that, well, I'm not getting all of these views and listens that some people are getting, because I think it's a lot of it's a popularity contest, to be honest. And I'm somebody who keeps to myself for the most part. One of the reasons is just that, you know, the way I grew up, pretty much everybody fucked me over because that's what they do. And to have the respect of some of these people in the liberty, quote unquote, liberty community is a positive thing. So, and I often forget about that. You know, I sometimes, I honestly do get down on myself or something. Like I look at a show and like, okay, well, you know, only this amount of people listen to it or whatever. And I realized that it's not just, you know, talent is one part of it, and doing a good show. And of course, I constantly try to get better. I'm not where I need to be. I need to continue to improve. But it's not just about that. You know, I could be the best Liberty podcaster out there as far as my delivery, my content, and still not get to where some other people are at. Because there's certain things that I think factor into that. You know, there's marketing involved. There's people that put on personas to market themselves. And I come out and just, you know, be myself, and I say what the fuck I think. And I'm not going to compromise that, whether that helps or hurts me. But I'm not going to put on some fucking persona neither, just to get attention or to try to be more controversial to get attention, or kiss up to people and act fake and then go and talk a bunch of shit about them behind their back, like some people I know in Las Vegas. So anyway, we'll be talking about not that specifically, but the marketing aspect. And that was something that I always had issues with, getting the show out there. And yes, there's social media, and that helps a lot. But at the same time, you know, I always kept my Facebook. When I got on Facebook in the first place, which I really didn't want to because of the whole fact that you're giving the government all your information, I got on it because my cousins were like, hey, we can talk on Facebook. I'm like, okay. So I kept my friends at a minimum because I don't want people I don't know looking at pictures and knowing my business and all of this shit. So it pretty much stayed that way until I basically turned my page into all it is the show and activism and posting articles about the government. Now, my fiance always copies me or tags me and, you know, stuff. And that's the only shit you're going to see that is personal. Everything else, I mean, this stuff is personal, like from me, but I mean, it's always about the same thing. It's about the government. It's about the police. It's about things that are going on. So I don't post anything outside of that. But you'll see a bunch of posts that she put on there, and, you know, what can I do? I'm not going to delete them. So I ended up getting to a point where I accepted anybody as a friend and went out and tried to network more, but I was starting from way behind, you know, where people already had thousands of friends over the years, and I had like 40 because, again, I would only accept friendship from people I know pretty well or know enough where I don't mind that they see this stuff. So that kind of hurt. And then you see people with 2,000 friends, and obviously they're not friends with these people, nor do they talk to them all the time, because you can't physically be friends with that many people. But some people are out there putting on a fake persona, acting like they're, super activists or whatever, and that they do all of this shit, which is easy when you don't have a job, and get a lot of attention for it, where I have a different personality, and I'm not the type of person to... One, I'm not a fake person. And two, as I said before, I mean, I'm not going to sit there and act like I like these people that I don't. And if people don't like me, then they don't like me. If they don't like the show, then they don't like the show. And that's how it is. But anyway, just to give a little background on before Shire Dude, or a little more, I guess I gave some background there, but a little more before Shire Dude comes on. So I started, it will be 2 years in April. So I've been doing the show almost 2 years now. And I've had a lot of ups and downs, especially from Blog Talk Radio to Spreaker. For some reason, people didn't take to that, well, when I say take to that, they didn't follow that I moved or got the information, or because Facebook also, you miss all these posts, you have all these people that you follow and whatnot. So I had some success on Blog Talk Radio. I had a show with 700 people. That was because Pete Air was on. I had weeks where every day it was at least 100 listeners. And then I've had shows where I've had 20. So it's been a lot of ups and downs. It depends on the show. It depends on the promotion, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly what causes all these people to listen to the show. So recently I had a show that over 300 people listened to. It was just about Making of a Murderer. So I would assume that the reason was because it was about Making of a Murderer and people were so interested in that series, which was a series on Netflix about a guy who was arrested for sexual assault, served like 18 years. Then they proved he was innocent. And then I think a couple years later he was arrested for murder, and now he's in jail for murder, claiming that he's innocent, which I believe he is. So I did a show about that. I didn't know how big it was. So I did the show because I happened to watch the series and had an opinion that I think the police fucking killed her, the woman that he was accused of killing. But I didn't realize how big it was. And then I realized that obviously the topic and the title of your show is going to affect the amount of listeners. But at the same time, I need to stay consistent with what I'm doing, because essentially when I started out, really I wanted to, I went to protest. I went to some Tea Party meetings, which maybe like 4, which were really bullshit to me. I'm not a group type person, and I don't agree with their values neither. But I wanted to check them out. They did have some good speakers. They had somebody on Agenda 21 that I totally agreed with. And then they bring in the head of the Republican Party of Nevada who's spouting all this fucking bullshit. And I'm like, this is about it for me. And then I had come there once to see one of the radio hosts was speaking, and I met him before, and I was just curious what he was going to say. And I got there when they were praying. So the lady wouldn't let us go in and told us to be quiet. And I'm like, whatever, fuck you. And I left. I don't think I said fuck you to her, but I'm just like, basically in my head, I'm like, fuck you. So anyway, I got to a point where I saw all of these different types of applications online where you could start your own radio show. It was pretty cheap. Not a lot of you didn't need a lot of investment. And I have a background in my bachelor's is in film. I used to rap. I used a 4-track recorder, and I used to record. I had an old program from like 2002 that I, played keyboard on and then rapped over. Not that I know how to play keyboard. I mean, it was kind of just doing it on my own and kind of learning, what sounds good and I can't read music or anything like that, but I think I came up with some okay beats, and I mean, it wasn't great, but the technology at that point, it was there, but what I had was probably a cheaper version of it. So I used my point being that I used recording programs. I used actual machines like a 4-track recorder, which is similar to a mixer in that it has all the same type knobs and faders and things like that. So I had a little experience with that, and of course the microphone and microphone levels, and I already had a microphone XLR. Because, of course, back then, that's all that would connect to a 4-track recorder. You didn't have USB, and most people didn't have computers. And if they did, they had, I take that back. It depends what time you're talking about. I guess I'm talking about like late 90s, mid to late 90s, where that's when everything, started, where the internet started to build up and things like that. So it was essentially, I think the first 4-track recorder I had was in 1994. So anyway, I had some background, but I was far from an expert or anything like that, but I knew enough as far as, maybe not enough, but enough to get started, essentially. So what I did was, for a while I thought about it, and I wanted to do radio years before that. I was actually on this fucking stupid-ass radio show of this kid, my friend's cousin, who was a wannabe Howard Stern, and essentially re-edited the whole fucking thing that I was on, and I was on it totally wasted. I drank like a bottle of vodka, and he's lucky I didn't run into him again, because he totally manipulated it and made fun of me and all this shit. Not that I do anything, but I probably would have fucking yelled at him and scared the shit out of him or something, because he was just a little fucking tiny kid. But in the big scheme of things, I mean, now it doesn't really mean much. That was what? 6-7 years ago now. So at that time, though, I thought about doing some kind of political radio, because I would watch these news channels and I would just yell at my fucking TV no matter who I was listening to, because I never believed in Democrats and Republicans, and they all contradicted themselves, and they were all full of shit, and it was the same bullshit. And I would say at that point, if you were to classify me as something, I was just a normal libertarian or something. And I didn't really get into all the other stuff, just because a lot of it, to be honest, was I was busy trying to meet girls, and that took up a lot of time, and I would just go out on the weekends and drink and try to meet girls and whatever. And but I thought about doing a radio show back then, but I just never did it. So I wanted to do some form of activism, but things like protests and civil disobedience, which it's fine, people that do it, and I support whatever people do. I don't believe in just saying, hey, arrest me, doing something, and then, hey, arrest me, and not in actually letting them arrest you, whether you want to run or you want to defend yourself. And I understand not defending yourself. And I've been in situations where obviously I didn't defend myself neither, but just to be like, okay, you can arrest me and be cooperative after you're disobeying. I don't get that, because you're not fully disobeying. At least bring it to, like I said, at least get away or do something where they don't know it's you, so you can get away with it. But if it gets a lot of media attention, and I mentioned this when I was talking to Shire Dude a couple nights ago, that I can see a point there, because it shows people how ridiculous the state is. And that's really the point. But a lot of it doesn't even get any attention anymore, because people that are getting murdered don't get any attention. So it's not a lot of civil disobedience, unless it's a huge amount of people. But I mean, one or two people doing something, it's not going to really impact anything, except it's going to put you in jail or put you just in the court system and bullshit to deal with. I do believe in non-compliance, but to back it by self-defense. But anyway, I wanted to do something, and of course, having a background in media and wanting to do something like radio, and radio was immediate. So first I thought about doing YouTube videos, and I actually started to do one and had my fiance film it, and then we never finished it. So we had done that, or started to do that, but I didn't actually, end up finishing it. I did film I gave a presentation to a tea party, which they could care less about the police and how they are militarizing and murdering people and all that. And nobody really seemed to care, because, all they do is support police. And essentially, I thought, I was looking at, I believe it was Blog Talk Radio, but other sites as well. And I thought, well, let me try this. And Shire Dude has just called in, so let me bring him on. I want to kind of finish this, but it will only take me a couple minutes. So let me bring him on all I got to do, I'm like, let me bring him on. I'm like, I already connected him. I just got to turn up his fucking, his fader here.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Great. How you doing?
Okay, and it's great, of course, to have you on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back on. It's been a minute since I've been on Nonpartisan Liberty.
Well, it's also been a minute since I have, because I just came back this week too. So
yeah.
That's partially why, because I was off like 3 weeks.
Yeah. Wow.
My mother was here not last week, but no, was it last week? Did she leave? No, I came back last week, right? Yeah. So the week before she was here, and then I took 2 weeks off before that. Just to get a break and just, stressful shit, whatever. So I was just telling my history. So let me just finish this real quick. And the only reason I wanted to get into this is because I knew you weren't going to call in till about 7:30. So this was my, what I had to talk about for the first half hour. But I initially got into some other shit, like how they can't stop talking about ISIS, and it's just such bullshit and all of that. And I don't want to rehash that, so whatever. Because I was starting to say how we're actually going to have a semi-positive show today. Something that's not depressing or that makes you angry or whatever. Because usually every show has something that's going to make somebody angry, including myself, that's going on, or depressed, or feel like, they have no options or whatever. And then I started kind of getting into ISIS because they mentioned some bullshit on the news, and, is it really an attack on Americans? Because where it happened, they knew a bunch of Americans would be there. Some senator said that, and I'm like, just shut the fuck up, please. But anyway, I don't even want to get into that. So I was just talking about my history, and I had found Blog Talk Radio, And I was talking about how basically other activism just wasn't for me. I had tried, going to protests, and maybe it was partially with the people I was with, because a lot of them were more conservatives. Las Vegas, I'm sure, has people that have the same views as me. And I remember when Mark Edge from Free Talk Live was here, he had a dinner and there were a few other people that came that he knew, and they have kind of the same beliefs, at least I'm assuming. I talked to them a little, and they're not really associated with that conservative liberty movement, I guess. The people that I don't want anything to do with at all anymore, period, that are either people that are lean more conservative, or they're anarchists who want socialism. So, and that's fine if you want, because they want it more like not from the government, but I don't know how you're going to be able to, survive or how that's going to work. Like the famous quote, socialism is great till the money runs out, because you have, if you had a small socialist community and everybody was dedicated, I think that's the only way it could work. But you're going to get into, this person's not doing their part, this person's not, doing more work than these people, and it's just, and I'm talking in a society where there's no government, they just started their own socialist community. But
sure,
I had a talk with, sorry, did you want to?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, like, power to the communes. Like, hey, if you want to try that out, just as long as I have the chance to opt out of
exactly,
that whole mess.
Exactly. As long as the people in it too have the freedom to leave, I have no problem with that. However, I had a discussion with, I'd say, a former semi-friend, and he started talking about co-ops, and everything should be a co-op. And basically, if it's not a co-op, they would protest it and make sure that nobody would work for you, so you couldn't have your own business. And really, it started to, I think about, and this is on the air, I actually have the show, and
see, that's where you just play a drop of the Soviet national anthem while the guy's talking about the bourgeois.
Because basically, even without the government, because they were talking about, well, they're against power structures. So if you have your own business and people work for you, that's a power structure somehow. But basically, they would be doing the same thing, because they would be getting a union of people basically forming their own power structure to stop businesses from being able to operate as a business. I mean, if I put together, I'm trying to start a whole network and whatever, and, up to this point, it's not going that well, but I mean, it could be doing a lot worse. Like I talked about earlier, I got a compliment about my studio from Stephanie Murphy when I had her and Brian Sovereign in my studio, and the fact that I even got to have them in my studio means something, because they're, to me, people that are respected in the quote-unquote liberty community, and they came over my house and did a show in my studio. You know what I mean? So I know that they were on the show before that. So I know that they could have said no or made up an excuse, but obviously they respect me enough and like the show enough to do something like that. So I sometimes get down on myself where, okay, I don't feel like I'm getting enough listeners or whatever, but I do have respect from some people that are very successful, like Mark, who's gotten a bunch of guests for me, who's been very helpful, who's been basically like a consultant almost. I mean, I actually asked him if I could list him as an executive consultant, and he was like, fine, because basically that's kind of, he'll give me advice. We were supposed to set up a call about marketing and stuff, and he's really busy, and we didn't get to set that up, and then I had some stuff and whatever. But that at least I can say that, well, I have the respect of these people, and I should at least feel good that I have that. Not in an arrogant way, but just in a I should feel good about what I'm doing is what I mean. Mm-hmm. But not to take up too much time with this. So I started with trying different forms of activism. It just didn't fit for me. As I have told you, I have a background in media, not radio specifically, but I used to, I know about recording. I did rap CDs. I mean, nobody really heard them, but I still went through the process of recording and buying a microphone and learning about, microphone levels and, the level of, I sampled stuff. So I would take like a beat from one song, then I would take like a bass line from another song. So I had somewhat of a background. I mean, not a huge one, but at least a little, knowledge of some of this stuff. And I had I thought about doing political radio in the past. I wouldn't say what I do now is political radio per se, but because I would watch these fucking shows and I'm just like, all these people would make me sick. And I never believed in Democrats and Republicans. I thought it was all bullshit. I would say in the past I was like a libertarian probably, even though I really didn't think about it in those terms. But anyway, so I thought the best fit for me was doing something in the media, and I was thinking about doing YouTube videos, which I'm still going to do at some point. I just haven't had the time with the show and work and everything. And I started filming something with my fiance, and this is where I kind of left off when I brought you on. But and then I was looking and I saw Blog Talk Radio, and I had seen it before. And I'm like, let me try this. So what I ended up doing was I had a microphone, but it was an XLR one, and I couldn't use it with my computer. So I bought like a $10 microphone off of eBay. And I bought a headset that was like $10 too off of eBay. That $10 microphone wasn't that bad, but I mean, it was on Blog Talk Radio, so the sound's not that good anyway. So I was able, it wasn't a microphone it wasn't a USB one, but I could still connect it through my computer through another port. And you could also do it through the phone. So I think the first show I did through the phone, just as a let me try something. Mm-hmm. So, and what's fucked up is I on what I told you about with issues with some people, I had some fuckhead comment about my 8th show, how terrible my show is and don't ever listen to it and whatever. And I'm like, that was my 8th show. And actually, I don't even think it was that bad, because I think it was interesting because I had my cousin on who had his kid taken away. So I don't know. I don't think I was that great, but I mean, I think I asked some good questions at least. And I thought it was interesting how they took his kid away just for bringing his kid to the hospital, but it's a long story. But anyway, so I tried it. I didn't invest a lot of money at first. And this is something that I don't think anybody should do. If you're somebody, your position is different where you've done other shows and you have experience, and now you're like, okay, well, I want to buy equipment and do my own show. Yeah. That's totally different because you've already done radio. But for somebody that's not sure, and if it's the first time you're doing it, I mean, I would do something like Blog Talk Radio, and anybody can do it. I mean, get the one there's a cheap one where you can get an hour. I think I initially bought the one for 2 hours for $40 a month. So I invested $40 on that, and then maybe with the headsets I bought and the microphone for the first at least month, I think. And I was doing 7 days a week because when I started, because I was like, yeah, I got all this shit to say. And then that stopped really quick. I think I did that 2 weeks, and then I'm like, I can't fucking do this shit. That's nuts. Yeah. So, and I was doing 2 hours. So that's kind of how I started. And I went from that to, I bought the Blue Yeti, just the USB one. And for about a year, because I still didn't think I was good enough to even bother with the equipment. And not to say that, whether I was or wasn't, that's up to people's opinions. But I didn't feel that I should be investing in all this equipment yet. And I did it for about a year with my Blue Yeti microphone and my computer on Blog Talk Radio, which did so, like I was telling you off air, it has so much functionality, although it crashed so many times and the sound quality is bad. And that was a problem. And then it had the reputation that the sound quality was bad. So to other people, it was like, if you're on Blog Talk Radio, I don't want nothing to do with your show, as far as, not that I won't come on, but like with LRN or something like that. Like Ian, for people who don't know, runs LRN and is a host of Free Talk Live, which is the biggest.
That's like a nationally syndicated radio.
Just so people know, that he's, the host of Free Talk Live, one of the biggest, or the biggest, what I call the biggest true freedom and liberty show in the country, over 170 stations. And he has what he calls a hobby, LRN, the Liberty Radio Network. So for LRN, he wouldn't have a show with the sound quality of Blog Talk Radio. And now, after I, got all this equipment and everything, I totally agree with him on the sound.
It makes sense. Yeah.
You don't really realize until after you get to that point where, because once I got my sound together, I was like, damn, this shit fucking sounds good.
Yeah, see, I'm actually recording on a Blue Yeti right now. That's what I'm talking to you on, and that's what I've been doing all my Liberty stuff on. Well, most of my Liberty stuff on for the past 2 years, and now I'm at that point of graduation where I'm going to get all the fancy stuff.
Yeah. And that's how I think it kind of should be. Yeah. Where don't right off the bat start to invest in all this equipment. A Blue Yeti's pretty expensive. It's like $60 or $70 or something, right? Or 80.
Yeah.
It's between 60 and 80. So it's not cheap, but I mean, that's not a lot of money, but that's definitely, I think once you're doing it for a month or two, I definitely think, buying a good microphone, don't buy a $500 microphone, but buying some, something that's good enough, a good USB, a solid USB microphone, I think you should do. And like I said, that's what I did for about a year. And then what happened was I had moved in from an apartment. I had a 1-bedroom apartment, and I moved to rent a house. And now I have a whole room that is a studio. So once I got that, along with doing the show for a year already, and all the things with Blog Talk Radio, the sound not being good enough, I'm like, well, I want to upgrade all of this. And I had the money to do it. So at that point, I decided that I'm going to upgrade and buy all this equipment. And I didn't buy it all in one, order. I got this, then I got that, then,
What would you say is like the base level startup cost for your setup, like what you did when you moved in, got the studio or got the room
for everything? Because I added this up.
Yeah.
Everything I have now, like all the equipment that I bought.
Yeah, sure. What's that?
Probably it's $2,500.
Wow. Yeah, so I just calculated.
You don't have to spend that much, but I mean that's what I had spent, and that's not counting the computer that I already had, and then I had to buy a new computer because my computer got all fucked up too.
I've got a list of the things that I would need, that I'm going to need to start this upcoming show that I've been working on, and this is base level. This is one microphone, one pair of headphones, one mic stand. Base level stuff. It comes out to about $700.
Well, I think sorry to interrupt, but I think what you can do is, and I did this to an extent. Like I said, I didn't buy everything at once. Although at the time I had some money saved up. But I bought like certain things, like say, and we can get into this in more detail later, but like, like a compressor, I got that later. I didn't get the compressor when I got the mixer, or I didn't get, I think the first thing I got, if I remember correctly, might have been the first big thing was the mixer. And then later also I got the Zoom H4n, which is great because, like I said, it's portable too, so you can go out and like and the sound quality is great. It's better, like I was telling you, it's better than Spreaker, and you can go up in Spreaker's 128 or something like. The Zoom goes way beyond that. Of course, it creates huge files if you do that. But I mean, the sound quality is great and it's portable. And I got mine brand new for like $200. But now they even have a higher, their newest version. Just like phones keep coming out with their the 7 of the whatever that phone is that we were talking
Galaxy
about.
7.
Yeah. So like now I know they have an H6n. They used to have an H2n. And I don't know. I think it might also have to do with the amount of tracks because it has like 4. It's also like a 4-track recorder as well. But yeah, that thing is great. And for a while when I was still on Blog Talk Radio, I would record directly to that. And then I'd upload it to Blog Talk Radio. I kept Blog Talk Radio for a little while for one reason, and that was just they had a phone listen line. And that's unfortunately what I'm missing now is where you can just call in, like Free Talk Live has. Mm-hmm. You can call in and listen through your phone.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so they had a lot of good positive things. It's just that, the sound quality and it crashing so many times. But before we get to any of this other stuff, I know you have a bunch of events going on, and I want to make sure that we get to those. And then hopefully, if we have time, we can mention them again at the end of the show. But here's your opportunity to bring those up, and you can go into whatever detail you want.
Excellent. So yeah, a lot of the recording that I do in Manchester, New Hampshire. That's where I am. I moved for the Free State Project. A lot of that recording is live streamed activism. So I use an app called Bambuser, and I live stream and all my live stream
and just
footage.
Not to cut you off, but just to let everybody know that that's a free app that you can download.
Oh, yeah.
I would suggest that everybody download that because if you get pulled over by the cops. And you're going to want to, there's been so many incidences of police taking phones or deleting the information. So
yeah, they can't delete a live stream. It's already
exactly. So
exactly,
I just wanted to add that. So sorry, Go ahead.
Yeah, and then of course the other benefit of that is you can set it. Right now I have it to set to auto post to my Facebook page. So as soon as I start recording with the Bambuser, it posts already, and so people can kind of join in and watch and see what's going on, see where I am. So you can even use it like as emergency contacts. Inform all of your Facebook people. So the first event, let's see here, 420. I'll start with that one because it's great. That's fun. April 20th. It's tradition here in New Hampshire that all the activists, or a lot of them, go to Concord, New Hampshire, and we smoke cannabis on the steps of the State House. And
just so people that don't know, and I'm sure they do, because I'm not a big. I used to sell weed, but I was never a big smoker. I can count the amount of times I did it, and the last time I did it was like 1996. It's just not my thing. I don't give a fuck if other people do. It's funny, I actually smelled it today, like right outside of my work when I was walking to the garage, and then I saw some security talking to some guy. And that shit went all the way up too, man. That was some fucking potent shit because I could smell it on the 9th floor, and the dude was on like the 3rd floor. But where did 420 come from? Like, I always knew of that because I knew people. I've been around people that have done like every drug there is. So I always knew of 420. But what Do you know the
Like the
history
number?
of that? Like how that came about and how that relates? Or is it just, as far as you know, like, hey, 420 is, because that's all I know, that, 420 means,
It's pot
smoke.
time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But do you know if there's any
I know that that's the code that
history
a
to
lot of that's the code that a lot of law enforcement officers use for cannabis. Like when they're talking about weed on their radios. They say,
like
it's
187 being murder in California or whatever.
Yeah, so I think it's just that. I think it's just they figured out the code and they started calling it that.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, tons of people are going to be on the steps of the State House. It's like in the afternoon. It's probably an event that's going to go on for a while.
And this goes
of
on
course,
every year, right? At the State
every
House.
year. Last year, the cops didn't even like show up. They know we're going to be out there, and they don't mess with us anymore, even though it's definitely illegal in New Hampshire.
Right.
New Hampshire's still got the kind of draconian weed laws because of the governor vetoing all of our great marijuana legislation being pushed forward by the free state legislatures.
How many people end up coming?
Last year it rained.
Yeah, I heard that last year wasn't normal, but I mean,
but we still had
usually
maybe like 100 people.
So
it's a chunk of people.
Yeah, I know, because I had heard that, I think, on Free Talk Live, that it had rained, but still a bunch of people showed up. So,
yeah. And of course, you can see that old footage too. All of my live stream footage is available at shiredude.com. If you just click on live stream, it's all still there on my Bambuser.
Were you there the year before? Because I know you haven't been in New Hampshire that long.
But I want to say I showed up in New Hampshire. Let's see, April, May. No, I showed up the next month. So
okay.
I just barely missed it.
But from what you heard, like if it on a normal day, assuming it's not raining or whatever, how many people show up? Like a couple hundred or more than
probably.
that, or because what are they going to do? They're going to arrest everybody? I mean,
yeah. This year I haven't seen as much promotion for it, so I'm kind of wondering like what the turnout's going to be. But it's tradition; it'll happen. I'll be there. I'll be recording it, so you can watch that live as it happens.
Is everybody? Does everybody light up for the most part, or
pretty much? There's
because it's better when people, everybody does. Because like I said, you can't, if you have 200 people and only like 3 or 4 people, or even 10, it's easier to, But I mean, if you have that many people, I would just surround them like, y'all motherfuckers ain't arresting nobody.
Of course, in the in the smaller 420 rally situations, when you're just like in a park doing it with like a kind of close knit group of people, the trick is to hand roll some cigarettes and pass those along with the joints, and then
so they don't know which.
As the cops are walking through the crowd, you pass the cigarettes towards the cops and pass the joints away from them.
Yeah. Well, I heard that. Rich Paul, and I had him on the show once for like the whole show, like for like 3 hours, because when I interview people, and we'll get into this too as part of our Talking About Liberty podcast, I like to really get into detail. I like to get into the story, and I think one of the reasons, and I've been told by some people that I'm a good interviewer. I don't know. And one of the reasons, if that's the case, is because I really get into it. Like, I ask these questions because I'm really interested in these people. That's why I asked them to come on. If I wasn't, because I get background beforehand and I try to do pre-interviews and whatever, and that's something I suggest, and we'll talk about interviews, like I said, later. But I'm generally interested in these people's stories, and I want to get into the detail of them, and I want to get all that information out there. But I had heard from Rich Paul that for years that it was a park or something that they would just I can't remember if it was like a monthly thing or a weekly thing or
Keene Central Square. It was a daily thing for a long time. Yeah,
I knew it was pretty often.
Yeah. And they, the height of it, of course, is depicted in the movie Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree, which is on YouTube. It's free to watch.
Was that when he was arrested?
Yep.
There?
Yep, Derek J
Okay.
was arrested. Rich Paul was arrested during one of those too. Yeah. And Derek, that arrest is just great for the camera because he's walking with his lighter lit and singing "Give Peace a Chance."
Yeah. Well, I know he was sitting there with, and if anybody hasn't seen it, so we're talking about. There's a documentary, I guess I'd call it.
Yeah.
But it's a documentary, but it's more than that. Calling it a documentary, I don't think gives it enough justice. But it's called Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree, where Derek J, who's an activist and who has been on Free Talk Live and had a bunch of other shows. I personally think he's better on camera than on the radio. That's just my opinion. But I thought it was great, actually. But he did a documentary where they documented all these arrests for things that there was no victim. And one of the scenes, and I think you can see it at Derek J's victimlesscrimespree.com. You can see it for free.
It's victimlesscrimespree.com.
Oh, okay. No, Derek J, just victimless crime. Okay. Or if you search Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree, you'll probably find it. And you can watch it for free, and which is where I saw it, and it gives. I thought it was very interesting on so many levels because there's a lot of stuff that goes on. It's not just the arrests for ridiculous stuff. It's you see this person really just trying to live, and there's an emotional part of it. There's the police just doing ridiculous things. I thought it was very well done, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's the movie that I saw that made me want to move to New Hampshire.
Well, it wouldn't make me want to move because I'm like, fuck, people are getting arrested for all this ridiculous shit. It can't be as free as they say it is. But yeah, I mean, this was mostly I think every arrest was in Keene, right?
Yes.
But he ends up going to jail, and it's just ridiculous. And then you have, it's sad, and he has a very interesting personality, and it comes out in the documentary. Like I said, I'm not as much as a fan of him on the radio, to be honest, as a host. But I think where his talent lies is he's a personality.
Oh, yeah. He belongs on camera.
I think he really, where his talent lies is being on camera doing, even, who knows? I mean, maybe he could even act as well, doing Liberty type skits or, shorts or films or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did a great job in it. And the editors, and I know Ian from Free Talk Live was involved in it as well. So if you haven't seen it, I would say definitely see it. And I know it sounds like, you hear about it, you're like, whatever, it sounds stupid. But no, it was really good, especially when people talk about documentaries. Most people are fucking documentaries. But no, it was very entertaining at the same time. So I think all the different things that you need for something to be successful, like I said, I mean, it had what the cops did, it had emotion in it, it had the personality of Derek J, it had the sadness of somebody going to jail over, I mean, I guess he wasn't as upset because he's also gay, so he gets to be around a bunch of guys. He made a joke about that. So, but still, you're in jail. I mean, it's not you. No matter what, it's like lock yourself in your room for a week and see how you feel. So, Yeah, it was ridiculous, the whole thing. And he was facing like 8 years or some ridiculous amount of time. So he pled out to, what did he serve, like 60 or 90 days? I mean,
he pled out to much. Yeah,
it was
I forget how many
way
exactly.
too long, and it really shows the ridiculousness of the system, and that's the main point of that. So sorry, I didn't mean to get into a whole long thing on that, but
yeah, no, it's one of my favorite movies. I like talking about it.
But yeah, there was the scene where he got arrested, where he was sitting next to a cop, and he asked him if he was going to arrest him. I believe if he lights it up, and he just lights it up in front of the cop, and he arrests him.
Yep. Yeah, he's like, "Do you mind if I smoke?" And the cop's like, "Hey, do what you're gonna do." And then he does.
Right. Then he arrests him.
Oh man, that was a great scene. But so that's the first event. You'll get to see that, except minus the arrests on 420, right? And of course, we'll all be smoking at 420. It's a great event every year. I'm looking forward to it. The other events that I wanted to talk about, I actually posted an article on freekeen.com about this. The Manchester police checkpoints have started up again. Every year, the Manchester Police Department, well, most years, the Manchester Police Department starts checkpoints around this time of year when the weather's nice and they can stand outside and really just stand around and do these sobriety checkpoints. They're notorious for, like, we check the arrest records after the fact because those are all public. And then the checkpoints are notorious for not catching any drunk drivers. Of course, I don't condone drunk driving. I probably don't need to go into this on your show, but because the people listening probably get it. But I should say,
I say that I don't condone it, but I used to do it all the fucking time. So I understand it, and as long as you don't hurt anybody else, then
right.
You make it home safe, then I don't give a fuck. And I used to do it a lot and would always make it home safe. Although I did hit inanimate objects when I was like, pulling into places. I'm going to leave it at that because I don't know what the statute of limitations. I mean, this is over 10 years ago, so or hit a sign once, like stuff like that, or a parked car or whatever. It was all on private property, so
right.
Police couldn't do anything about it anyway.
So it's so we go out there. A bunch of Manchester-based activists go out there en masse with signs, and we divert traffic away from the checkpoint, so that people don't get harassed. Because usually, what the cops end up doing is they harass people for, like, oh, your inspection sticker's expired, or oh, your tail light is out, or all this menial, like, bullshit that's just, like, not, it's all victimless, obviously, and people shouldn't be having to pay these exorbitant fines.
I mean, they use it, like you said, they use it for things they're not supposed to be using it for. And even the Supreme Court ruling, and I've mentioned this before a bunch of times, I read the Supreme Court ruling, and from what I recall, they even admitted that this is not constitutional, but the public safety aspect is more important than the rights of the people, is basically how they ruled. Now, I'm totally paraphrasing, and that's how I interpreted what I read, but that's how it came off to me, that they were saying more that, hey, this is kind of, unconstitutional, but what it adds to public safety overrides that. And that's scary. I mean, there's so many fucking rulings by the Supreme Court that are scary. And the whole thing is, the Supreme Court was never supposed to have that power anyway. They were never supposed to rule on the constitutionality in the way that they do. That was never supposed to be their job. They just said, they kind of what they did, and you can go back, I don't remember the year of the first, maybe it was Marbury versus Madison, but I think it was. But that gave them the ability that they kind of just made it up and said, hey, we have the power to do this. And that's pretty much what government's been doing, since the beginning.
Yeah, man. The Supreme Court. Yeah. So yeah, this is happening. I should probably say the date because I don't think I did yet. April 22nd, and I'm going to start live streaming at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And is it just for that day, or are you going to start covering them for like the whole summer? Or
I'll cover for them for the
as
entire season. Yeah.
Okay.
Each year they do. I think 5 is the lucky number because they get a kickback from the federal government.
Yeah, you had mentioned that off air, that if they do a certain amount or whatever, or not, I don't know if it's based on a certain amount, but maybe it's based on every one they do. It's like, here's some money, which is really fucked up.
Or I think it's 5 or 6, and then they get the kickback.
One thing I since you brought this up, I do have to mention, because this brings up another point. Because at some point I did some research into this. I don't remember why, and that's when I found the Supreme Court ruling. But the state of Michigan, and states are so weird because you look in one area, it's like total non-freedom. Not that that's a word, and then in another area, compared to other states, you're like, well, they're very free in this law here, but they do all this other shit that's very oppressive. But the state of Michigan, the Supreme Court, somebody took a case to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, of course, ruled it's constitutional. Then the Michigan Supreme Court ruled that it's not. So in the state of Michigan, unless something has changed, it's not constitutional to have DUI checkpoints because the Michigan Supreme Court ruled against it. Just a side there.
Yeah.
That the Michigan, and other state Supreme Courts could do the same thing if they wanted to, but of course, why would they want to do that?
Yeah, it's even by the city of Manchester's own, or actually, I don't know if this is a statewide ordinance, but the way they're supposed to do these sobriety checkpoints is they're supposed to have a sign well in advance of the checkpoint that says, there's a checkpoint ahead. There's a sobriety checkpoint ahead. And it's supposed to be far enough away from the actual checkpoint that you're able to turn away if you choose. Now, what they do is they have this their favorite spot over on Bridge Street, and they park right there, and then they put the sign on the bridge so you can't turn away because you're on a bridge. There's no legal way to actually avoid the checkpoint after you've seen their sign. So even by their standards, the whole thing is illegal. And, you could bring that up to them. Of course, they'll put it in the circular file of the complaints department. But yeah, so yeah, that's going to be another great event. Well, it'll be a series of events. I really enjoyed doing them, and we get up to like 30 activists doing these checkpoint cop block events. People from all over the city thank us. They drive by and cheer for us. It's intense. It's really intense, the cop blocking in Manchester, New Hampshire. I've even had people pull their car over while I'm standing there with my sign, and they hand me money, just a wad of cash as a tip. Here's tip. That's
cool. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, here's tip money for your activism. And that just doesn't happen elsewhere, man. Or at least, not that I'm aware of. I didn't know this was a paying gig.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody here is. I wanted to drive through them. I actually drove through one once.
Ooh, yeah.
Not on purpose, but I wanted to drive through them on purpose. But I wasn't drinking, so I was fine. But it was fucked up. They had a line of cops on each side, about at least 10 of them. And they're just
so
standing
wasteful.
there. It looks like the military. And they asked leading questions because they're like, how much you had to drink tonight? They don't ask, have you been drinking or have you had any alcohol? How much you had to drink? They do that on purpose.
So
and
no
of course I'm
answer.
like, nothing. And then he let me go. But this was a few years ago. So, well, more than that, maybe 4 years ago. But it's very intimidating because they have the fucking cops, and I don't know if they do the same thing in New Hampshire and other states, but they literally, at the checkpoint on either side of the lane, and they force you through this one lane, that they have literally cops standing there in a straight line facing each other. So you have one side looking at the other side, like they're staring at each other, like they're the military, like trying to intimidate you. It's really fucked up, man.
Yeah, that sounds a lot creepier than what our checkpoints look like.
It's very creepy, and it's, you know, of course, Las Vegas is a city, and getting to be a pretty big city, so it's a lot different than you know, I know Manchester's a city, but
it's downright quaint in comparison.
Like 70 something thousand or something.
Oh, I wouldn't know, but it's
that's
it's
what I
very
heard.
small.
Yeah, that it's like the size of like just a big town. Really.
Yeah, it's the size of like a suburb, you know.
Right, exactly. So
people call it a suburb of Boston sometimes.
But so did you have one more? I thought you had one more thing you wanted to mention as well.
Yes, I did have one more event, and I'm trying to remember the date for this. Let me look at my calendar really fast. I'm so unprepared and unprofessional. I can't believe this. Okay, no, here it is. April 15th. Now, this requires a little more explanation. I've been vlogging lately, and that's vlogging.
And you can get those at shiredude.com, right?
Yeah, they post automatically every day because I've been vlogging every day on, and they're all on right at the front page of shiredude.com. And it's just, you know, it's just like what's going on with me. I've got a lot of stuff, a lot of things in the air that I'm juggling as far as like activism goes and just like life, you know. And I like to keep track of things and keep others posted. And I started it. Originally, I started it, and I actually thought I was just going to be like a weekly thing that I did, like a weekly roundup. But I really enjoy this kind of smaller video format. They're just like 2-minute bits that I do, and people seem to be enjoying them. So I just kind of kept doing them. I just kind of kept going, and I've been going for like 20-something days. So April 15th, on that day, I will have done my 50th vlog episode or vlog post or whatever you want to call it. And I figured I'd celebrate the
cool.
50th.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning the 50th that you were going to celebrate that. So what are you going to do for that?
I'm going to make it rain, and I'm going to make it rain cryptocurrency, namely
right,
Dogecoin.
That's what you had told me that, yeah.
Yes.
That you're going to give out free Dogecoin, or how is that going to work exactly?
There's an app, and it's called Doge Rain, one word, Doge Rain, and it's free. You can download it on your phone. And it's just an app for like throwing Dogecoins at each other. It's really like a tipping currency, like an internet tipping currency for people. A lot of people joke about how it's got barely any value, but that's kind of fun to it because I can throw, like I'm planning on throwing at least 10,000 Dogecoins, you know, on April 15th at 8 p.m. I'm gonna be throwing the Dogecoins. I'm gonna do it live. I'm thinking of like having like a live stream video for that too. While I'm doing it, so people can prepare. Because if you're running the app, you wag your phone back and forth, like your phone is like you're a dog and you're like wagging your tail because it's Dogecoin, right? And wagging your phone actually catches more Dogecoins if you're wagging it. If you're shaking it, then you catch more rain. So
there you go.
I'll make it rain a bunch of Dogecoin. I got donated. The Dogecoin community is kind of like one of my constituents, one of Shire Dude's many audiences, and we have got this kind of back and forth. Well, I'll go post some Shire Dude stuff on the Doge Reddit. And I'm like, oh, look, I mentioned Dogecoin in this weird video of mine, and they'll be like, great, here's some Dogecoins.
Yeah, so I know you had always when you were on the Rebel Love show. They always brought that up because it kind of like not made fun of you, but like how you were into Shire Dude's in the Dogecoin and whatever. I remember they would bring that up.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I like it. I like the community that's going on with it, and you know, I want to keep that motif going for sure. So I'll be throwing out some Doge, and. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Oh, and one really cool thing too about the app that the Doge Rain app is I've set it so when you catch Dogecoins from me, my name pops up, Shire Dude pops up on your phone, and then it says shiredude.com. So it's actually a form of advertising.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so people
And you're
all
not
over the world.
really paying that much because how much is Dogecoin worth at this point?
Let's see, 10,000 Dogecoins is about 20 something bucks.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah, not
that's
too much.
Pretty good investment.
Yeah,
for
of course, I've
advertising
got-
wise.
Well,
I mean, an investment to the advertisement part of it. I don't know about investing in Dogecoin. If that's a good investment, that's a whole nother issue. But definitely, if that and that's what you're going to give out 10,000
minimum. Yeah, I might do like a few different tosses. I've got like hundreds of thousands of Dogecoins. So this
maybe you have
we'll
some
see.
strippers flashing you back on camera or something like.
There you go.
I just think of the fucking. Though it actually happened here in Vegas, the idiot who made it rain in the strip club and during the NBA All-Star game, and somebody ended up getting shot and whatever. But
gosh.
yeah, that was. I happened to be in Sedona at the time. I wasn't even here, but I lived here, but I mean I was in Sedona for the weekend because my girlfriend at the time had lived there. But anyway, so maybe if you throw some out to some strippers, they'll flash you via camera or something.
There you go. I mean, I accept all sorts of different donations. I don't see why I wouldn't accept some flashing as part of a donation to shiredude.com.
If you'd like to, we should mention that. If you'd like to on camera,
yes,
flash Shire Dude, then that's welcome as well. Any form of well, I guess not anybody, the old ladies with droopy titties that have to lift them up to put them into the bra.
Hey, I'm a curious guy. Go for it.
I guess if you're, want to see what's going to happen if you, when you get older, if you're with an older woman, maybe, but I'd rather not see that personally. But yeah, so he'll accept that as well. So I want to take a quick break, probably the only break of the show. But before that, I just want to give you a chance to give your background because you've been on, a couple shows and then you've done your own stuff. And, so you've had a lot of experience with podcasting as well as video and things like that. So
sure.
Just to let everybody know, your experience.
Well, I've been editing videos since like high school, really. Just kind of screwing around. I got a camera I don't know, freshman year of high school, and I just started editing just for fun. It's just been a thing that I've done. So that's my main thing. And as far as the Shire goes, as far as like the whole move and the Free State Project and stuff, I got into Free Talk Live for a while. This was in 2011. And I started interacting with other Liberty people in 2012. After making the move, that's when I really dove in and got into the whole Shire Dude shtick. That's when I became Shire Dude, And the live streaming, that was inspired mostly by cop blockers like Pete Eyre, Derek J, Mike Salvi, and some of the other Philadelphia activists. They did some really good live streams during the old when Adam Kokesh was doing those 420 rallies, and he got arrested. That was a big old thing. So live streaming has been a big part of it. Although live streaming is more just kind of for my own protection. It's not really for the entertainment value. It's I'm going to go do this activism. I want people to know where I am and what I'm doing, and to have an objective record of these encounters that I'm going to have with cops and other people. So live stream, it's really just a form of protection. It's not really the show. I have done comedy in the past. I did a show called Shire Dude, a self-titled show. That's available at shiredude.com right on the front page. I also did a show called It's Like This Too, which showcased Free State Project Early Movers. That was a fun one. We released that through Ron Paul's network, Voices of Liberty. And that one I really kind of sunk my teeth into different camera equipment. I had like 3 cameras on 3 different tripods. We got into actually like setting up lighting equipment and having lapel microphones and like a backdrop and it was like a studio that we'd go and we'd set up the whole studio and we'd do a slew of interviews. Of course, I didn't really do the interviews. I'm still a little. I feel like I've gotten a lot better on radio. I feel like I'm still a little shaky though. The vlog's been helping with that a lot for speaking and recording my voice, and then I'm forced to hear it back, obviously, when I'm editing, and then before I post it, I have to watch it, maybe a few times. And of course, there was the Rebel Love show that I got into.
Right, and that's where you did radio and video, actually, because you guys would stream through YouTube as well.
Yeah, I sunk so much time into working with the video program that we were using. It's called Wirecast. I believe they still use it.
I believe so, because I was looking into possibly streaming. Right now I post on YouTube, and I had asked Rob about that, who's the host of the Rebel Love show, and I believe that's the program he mentioned.
Yeah, it's a great program.
He said it was like $400 or something. But at some point I may do that. I don't know. I mean, the way you guys did it, plus you had more people. Like for me to just have a camera and just me, it's kind of like, do people even really,
well, with
want to see me sitting here?
It's not just the camera angles. Like you could do the whole. You could cut to like a YouTube video. You could cut to a picture of something.
Right.
You can have graphics going on in the background. You can do like special video effects. Of course, video effects. I think you'd need something a little more than Wirecast. At least the version we were using, it didn't really have video.
But then
effects.
At the same time, it would give me like more shit that I had to do while I was doing the show, which it's hard enough. Doing the, being on the board and trying to turn down my mic and other people's and keeping the levels where they should be. And then if I'm, trying to do all this other stuff, I mean, if it just was on me and I just changed camera angles, I could handle that. It's just the point that I'm thinking, does anybody just want to see me sitting here? Like, really? I could just put a picture of myself in my studio.
There's something to be said for that.
You know what I mean?
Rob and I, we had this division of labor thing going on where he took care of all of the audio and I took care of all of the video.
But you guys also had guests a lot in studio, and you had always at least you and him. So there was more for people to see as opposed to most of the people that I have on. I've had people in studio before, but especially with the people in Las Vegas, most of the people that are going to be on through Skype. So unless I get some kind of feed from them where I can show them as well, it's kind of like, well,
you could do,
which I know through Skype or something like that, or
you could do a Skype camera angle. So like you enter that into Wirecast just as, this is the Skype feed. And so you could cut to them the same way you would cut in Wirecast from like one camera to the other.
So I mean, that would be interesting because then people could see the other person, at least visually. They, we could go back and forth and I could do that.
Yeah, or you could do like a few of them. So you could do one angle is you, one angle is them, and then one angle is like you, but they're like in a little box in the corner. So you see both of you at the same time.
And I noticed that there's a show that does that where they do split screen.
Yeah. And
then sometimes they go back to the other person and go to them. And it's usually just two people. So I mean, I've thought about it. So maybe at some point I will do that. But until I'm focusing more on just improving and getting more marketing. Marketing the show more and trying to do that. So. Okay, well,
Yeah.
we'll take a quick break. Well, maybe not a quick break, but we'll take a short break, I guess, depending on what you believe is short. Since we've been on, I've been on since 7, but and we will be right back after this. Check us out on nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, and of course check out all of Shire Dude's events and all his goings on at shiredude.com. And don't forget about April 20th at 420, as well as April 15th with the Dogecoin event, and then
April
beginning
22nd.
April 22nd, okay.
10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
and you'll be posting all that on your page too. So just go back and check shiredude.com and for the dates. You still got at least a couple weeks until the first one, but and also, you know, check it daily for his daily vlogs, and check those out and see what you think of those. I gotta go actually check those out as well. Also, if you have any questions regarding what we're going to get into when we come back, which will be starting a Liberty podcast, you can call us at 702-46. I fucking forget the number because I was off for 2 weeks. Is it 460-7664? I got to check the fucking number. That's pretty bad. But I don't call it, and I've been off for like... I was off for a couple weeks. I remembered it yesterday though, so
That sounds right to me.
it's I know it's 7664 is the last 4 digits. So let me just make sure because I don't want people getting the wrong number. Yeah, 702-470-7664. So that's the call-in number, and then again 702-470-7664. And if you'd like to Skype in, you can send a contact request to Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and with your name and where you're calling from and what you want to talk about, and we can bring you on. Because that's the one thing that other shows won't do that, but you can have multiple people on Skype. So I've done it before, and the only downside to that, and this may come up in our discussion, is that it's all on the same whatever you want to call it, the same bus or the same a fader, or it's not separate. So like if you're loud and the other person's quiet, I can't really adjust. I guess while they're talking I can, but you know what I mean? It's not on separate faders or anything like that, but it's not a big deal. So not like anyone's going to call anyway. No one's called in a couple weeks. So anyways, we'll be back right after this. Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're here with Shire Dude, shiredude.com. And when we come back, we'll talk all about our opinions. And I stress that because I don't want people saying like we know everything, and because we don't. This is just our opinions on how to start a Liberty podcast. So again, we'll be right back after this.
Hey, an alien. Yes, I've travelled across space to check on the progress of your species. Cool. Shall I take you to our leader? Your what? Our leader, the guy in charge. The guy in charge of what? Well, in charge of everything. You have one guy in charge of everything? No, he's in charge of government. What is government? Well, government makes the rules for us. It tells us what we can do and what we can't do. So is government really smart? They come up with wise rules for you to follow? Well, mostly. But some of its rules are really stupid. Do you disregard those rules? No, we have to follow the rules, even if they are stupid or we disagree with them. Government punishes anyone who disobeys the rules. So you are slaves to government?
No, it's not like that at all. Government works for us, the people. It serves us. We're the boss.
It tells you what to do, and it punishes you with violence if you disobey it, and yet you're its boss?
Yeah.
But there are some things government does that you don't like.
Well, yeah, not everything government does is popular. Like spending on wars, for example.
What is a war?
It's when government basically spends the people's money on weapons and soldiers and then sends them over to the other side of the world to kill a bunch of people over there and destroy their country. I don't like it that government does this.
Well, I can see why you might not like that. Have you humans reached the stage where you generally consider stealing, enslaving, and killing each other to be bad things?
Oh yeah, we know that. Don't steal, don't attack, don't assault.
But you give money to government and they use it to kill people.
Well, yeah. But government does good things with tax money as well.
Why don't you stop paying for the things you don't like and only pay for the good things it does?
No, we can't do that. You can't just decide to stop paying taxes because the rules say that everyone has to pay taxes.
But the rules come from government though, don't they?
Yeah.
So government made a rule which says that everyone has to pay them money. So everyone pays taxes because if they didn't, government would punish them using violence?
Well, yes, but most people don't mind paying taxes. Most people feel obligated to pay taxes and obey government laws because it's for the good of society. Society needs government, and that means we all have to pay taxes.
So just to make sure I've got this straight, government makes the rules and you feel obligated to follow the rules, even the ones you don't like, and it tells you what to do and threatens to punish you if you don't do what it says, and it uses some of the money that it's taken from you using threats of violence to pay for things you don't like and actually think are immoral, like mass murder.
Yeah, but we can ask it to please tell us to do smart things, and please don't take our money and use it to kill people. We're allowed to ask them to tell us to do what we want them to tell us to do.
Are you guys just scared of this thing? Is government some huge monster that can just squish you at any moment if you disobey?
No, government isn't a monster.
Well, what is it then? Could you draw me a picture of it?
Government isn't really the sort of thing you can draw a picture of.
Maybe you could take me to it. Where is government?
You mean the building?
Government is a building.
No, but the politicians who make up the government have buildings they work from.
So government is a group of these politicians.
Yeah.
Okay, so what species are these politicians?
Well, they're human.
Like you?
Yeah.
So politicians are humans and they're government. You're a human, but you're not government.
No.
So it's the politicians, they're the ones that boss the rest of you around and make you do things you don't want to do and take your money using threats of violence. But even though you're all humans, you're not allowed to boss them around and take their money?
No, they'd put us in a cage if we did that. But look, it's not like the politicians can just do whatever they want. Like, a politician can't just come up to me on the street and make me give him money. They can't do that. Politicians can only do things like that in their job, when they're working for government.
Oh, so politicians aren't government, they just work for government.
Yeah.
Okay, so government isn't a monster, and it isn't a building, and it's not politicians, it's something else. And it employs politicians who are just regular humans who get to order everyone else around and take their money. How does a regular human become a politician?
Well, that's the great thing about our government. It's a democracy, and that means that the people actually have the power, because we get to decide who among us get to be the politicians. We get to vote. And if a politician starts doing things we don't like, we can just replace him with someone else at the next election.
So the people that get chosen to be politicians only get to boss people around and take their money for a short time, and then they go back to being regular humans?
Exactly.
That sounds like a powerful position to be in. But if you get to choose who does that, I assume that politicians are always the wisest, most honest, caring and respected people among you.
Well, no, not really. I wouldn't say politicians are known for being honest, or wise, or caring. And they're certainly not the most respected people among us. Come to think of it, most politicians are lying, power-hungry crooks.
The ones you chose?
Yeah, they're always doing things we don't like. They use taxpayers' money to enrich themselves and their friends, and they never keep their promises to voters. They've been caught stealing and lying and taking bribes, and they mostly do what the big corporations want. Yeah, they're always doing stuff like that. They're completely corrupt. They're a bunch of lying crooks.
But you said that most humans know that stealing and beating each other up and killing are wrong. And you said that you have the power because you can change who's in charge. So why don't you just replace the lying, thieving, murderous, crooked politicians with some regular people?
Well, we don't try to elect lying crooks. It just always turns out that way. But we have to have a government because some humans are nasty and might kill or enslave or steal. Civilization just couldn't survive without government.
Let me get this straight. Because you're worried about the small number of nasty people that are willing to kill, enslave and steal, you think it's necessary for your survival to have a system where some humans among you, for a short while, get to call themselves the government, and they get to order everyone else around like slaves and, if they want, commit mass murder overseas, using money they stole using threats of violence. Politicians get to kill, enslave and steal because if they didn't, someone else might. And you try to elect good, honest people to be politicians, but what happens every time is that the people you elect turn out to be corrupt, evil, lying crooks. That's your system.
Yeah, that's pretty much government.
You are listening to Nonpartisan Liberty for All Radio with your host, Dave Bourne. Call in at 702-470-7664 or Skype in, username Nonpartisan Liberty for All.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and we are back here with Shire Dude coming straight from the Shire, the state of New Hampshire. I didn't know what that meant at first. I feel like an idiot.
Oh.
Like people would say the Shire, and I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
New
I think it came
Hampshire,
about
duh.
From not wanting to use like the state, the government name. Like they figure they'll just call it what they want to call it instead.
But still, I mean, it's obvious that like it comes from the word New Hampshire or New Hampshire, but whatever, same thing. And people would call,
yeah, there are a lot of other movements like that too, where like the whole like Arcadia thing, which is like I think the combination of like states around New Hampshire, so like Vermont and Maine as well. And they just want to. It's like just the whole idea of like a secessionist movement, like becoming its own thing, and like oh, there's another one too. There's actually a bunch of these if you look them up, like old secession movements that have been around for like 20, 30 years. like Northern California, they wanted to secede, and I think also part of Southern Oregon. They wanted to become the Jefferson, like the state of Jefferson or the country of Jefferson. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I know that California actually has some plan to, and I think they didn't get enough signatures or it got denied or whatever, but they had some plan to like become 7 states or something. Like Northern California would become 7 different states, or 6, something like that.
It was Tim Draper, the big investor guy who's got a bunch of money. He was into Bitcoin too. I thought that was a whole really interesting kind of thing. He wanted to split California up into like 6 states. And man, that would that would probably solve a lot of problems for a lot of people, because having a big old state like that just causes trouble. Obviously, the people in the north want different things from the people in the south. And if you bring that to its logical anarchistic conclusion, your neighbors want different things than you do.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like you look at the federal government, and it started with 6 million people, I believe, and now it's 300 million.
Right.
And I think
they've got these one size fits all laws that we're all supposed to follow. Yeah.
And I believe I'm having an issue with Internet Explorer on my Spreaker computer. And hopefully it doesn't. Oh, it didn't affect the studio. Okay, cool. That was cool. It didn't touch the studio. It just affected Internet Explorer. Because actually, the Spreaker Studio is not in Internet Explorer now, or in any internet. It's like an application. So that was cool. Oh, that's good. So I guess if the internet crashes, I'm still good. Hey, that's a good thing to know. Anyway, we should finally get to our main topic.
Yeah.
That we've been waiting kind of all night to talk about, although I did talk a little about some stuff, that just my history, but let's actually get into, I guess, the meat of this. And I kind of put together an outline of some of the things that I wanted to bring up, and then, whatever you want to bring up as well.
Sure.
But I kind of started at the beginning with, first deciding to start a show. So, before we get into equipment and stuff like that, there's the, coming up with an idea, and we're specifically talking about liberty-oriented programs. So there's a lot that are out there already, and obviously I would assume that, you don't want to do the exact same thing that somebody else is doing, not you being you, but you being anybody. I mean, but everybody has different personalities and stuff like that too. But I think
thankfully the liberty movement is large enough to where we need to go down to another level of niche. You can't just do a liberty show anymore. You need to have a specific, like a liberty like liberty tech with sovereign tech, or school sucks. It's more like liberty and education. So finding a niche beyond liberty. Yeah.
No, definitely. And I don't know that I think my show is different, but it's not. It still discusses a lot of those same things, I believe, but I try to do it in a different kind of format. But some of the shows, they're going to be similar to other shows. But you have, like, I mentioned that earlier, Brian's show, that there should be more shows that are topics that don't necessarily coincide with liberty, but can be presented from a liberty perspective. You can have a sport, you could have a sports show, and I'm not telling people what type of show to do, because that's not what I'm doing. But I mean, people should do whatever they feel is best for them, and wherever their heart leads them. But it would be good if there were more shows out there that had that lean towards liberty, that might be a subject that has nothing to do with liberty. So, for example, like sports. Like if somebody had a sports show, but they presented it from a liberty perspective. You know what I mean? Because you can watch like TV and totally see where, okay, this show has liberal undertones or government undertones or whatever, and you can easily see that. So, it would be, especially the way the media is now. I mean, if there were more liberty people who did shows on topics that they're experts on, like even what Stephanie Murphy did, she kind of did the same thing with, one, she did Let's Talk Bitcoin, which is, it does relate to liberty, but not necessarily. I mean, you don't have to believe in liberty to use Bitcoin. And then she did.
There are plenty of statists who love Bitcoin, yeah.
Yeah, and then she did another show. What was it?
Pork Therapy.
Therapy, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have that as well. So, I think really whatever you want to do is what you should do. And if you want to do a show that just focuses on liberty and focuses on news and things like that, then I think that's fine. I try to mix it up as much as possible between, and I haven't been as much, but between a philosophical kind of ideas and news, where I try to talk about ideas more than, at least in the past. I mean, recently I haven't as much, but I don't just like find a bunch of articles and then, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about today.
Yeah, it's not a news show, but it's not really, yours is also, it's not really a preachy show either, which I think is the main thing. Like what I was saying earlier, it's the main thing to avoid is being too preachy. Like if you're quoting Rothbard on the air, you're probably too preachy, unless it's like in really good context. But if you're like just like reading economics in one lesson, stuff like that, I'd say that's something to avoid. And that's something that at that point, you're not really creating your own content very much. You're kind of just recycling content.
Yeah, you're regurgitating other people's stuff. So I try as much as possible to mix it up and talk about different ideas. And then I throw news in there too, but then I talk about it from a different perspective. But yeah, I don't every show just gather a bunch of news articles and talk about them. Because I think that's probably the most common thing for people to do, is just take a bunch of things that are going on in the news and just talk about those. And especially when I did shows with Ellen, we'd pick like a topic, and it wouldn't even have to be a current topic in the news or anything, and we talk about it. Like we talked about, age of consent and peaceful parenting and things like that, where we just examine a topic in society and get into the detail of it. And then, maybe I'd bring up an article just to mix things up, because if you talk about, I was doing a 3-hour show, and if that's all I'm talking about through the whole show, unless it's a topic that I can kind of break up and make it interesting enough for people to listen, and I don't know that anybody's listening to 3 hours of my show. I can't even get through 3 hours of my show, and it's my show. But not like I like to hear myself, but to, analyze what I've done and, my going through being self-critical and trying to improve and whatnot. But But that's what we would do, and I found those the most valuable and most interesting shows because we'd talk about these topics and how they affect society and our views on them and what we think. And so in some ways, some shows were more philosophical. And what I had going, and unfortunately I don't have it now, is I'd have different co-hosts every of the 3 days. So of those different co-hosts, I do a different type show. It would all have to do at Liberty, but based on who was on, I do a different kind of type of show. And like I said, the shows that me and Ellen did were more of philosophical stuff where we, pick a topic and focus on that. And we might refer to, writings or articles, but it wouldn't have to be something current or something that's in the news or anything like that. It would just be to back up a point or to, examine the topic further. But
so it's kind of like a variety show. I think that's probably the best way to describe it.
It was. I don't know what it is now. I mean, shows evolve, and as you go through, you learn to do things better, hopefully. And
sure, For instance, Brett Bennett does the School Sucks. He does the School Sucks podcast, and schoolsucksproject.com, I think is his website. He originally just railed on public education, public schooling, because there's a big difference between schooling and education. And then his show kind of shifted after a while and focused more on education and not worrying about the public schooling and just kind of going towards self-enlightenment instead, I think is the best way to describe it. And he's got some really interesting guests on there and stuff. And obviously the name of the show is School Sucks Forever. Like, he's not going to change that, but it's evolved. It's changed.
Right. So I definitely think, and then, eventually if you have a niche show, you're going to run out of shit to talk about eventually. Well, I guess it depends. I know
if you paint yourself in too much of a corner, then you're going to run out of,
You don't want to be too specific where, exactly like you just said, that you're going to run out of shit to talk about. So I set it up where I have a very broad area that I can cover, so I can, kind of go all over the place. And which is good because I have a lot of stuff to cover, but then at the same time, it's, it's constantly kind of changing. And now I'm in a different place than I was when I had a co-host every day of the week, because now it's kind of just me, and that can be, monotonous and boring after a while as well. So I'm trying to constantly find different things to be interesting and, reinvent things, but still stay true to my goal, which is to promote the ideas of freedom and liberty. Now, that's a broad statement. So basically on this part, I would say in my opinion, and then I want to get your thoughts as well, is that I think you should come up with some kind of mission statement or some kind of vision of what you want to do. And that can evolve and change, but what your purpose is, and whether it's activism, whether you just love doing podcasts, and I wouldn't, do it in expecting to make money or anything like that.
Yeah, so my thinking is, and this is kind of the way that I've approached any kind of filming project in the past, any long-term project, I'll say, is don't do an introduction episode. I know everyone says to do one. Like, a lot of people say, oh, well, first you want to start with telling the audience exactly what they should expect for every episode. Or every part of a series. I'd say just do it. Just show me what that first episode's going to look like after the introduction. And then if you like doing that, then keep doing it, obviously. Definitely have in your mind like where you are now and maybe where you want to go a few steps ahead as far as like what the show is talking about. But don't waste your time on like if I made a video right now and I'm like, hi, I'm Shire Dude, and I'm going to be doing a show about art and comedy in the Free State Project.
Yeah, I think for radio especially, I don't think that's necessary at all. I mean, if you're doing a drama like sitcom, I mean, obviously you wouldn't say that, but you have your pilot episode where you introduce your characters.
Yeah, just get into it.
Yeah, if you're doing a radio show, I mean, you can mention maybe, I used to do this show or something like that in the context of doing your show, and things come up and give background as it comes up. But yeah, and I think the first show I did was more of a test show, but I just talked about my ideas about freedom. I didn't, if I recall correctly, I didn't come out and say, do
We're
that
gonna be
type
doing this
of
show now. Yeah.
of thing. I don't believe so, at least. I mean, it was a while ago, but yeah, I don't think that's necessary. You start off your show and just get into it. No, I agree with that. Definitely, like I said, especially with radio, but with anything, I don't know. Even if you're doing a video, like what would be the purpose of, I just don't see, I agree on that you shouldn't do like some big, like I do a little introduction at the beginning of every show just to say, it's like a paragraph, this is what we're about. We promote the ideas of freedom and liberty and expose government, whatever. And that's it. It's just my introduction to my show. So people that haven't heard it before. And that's it.
Too much exposition, I'm saying, is a killer.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, if you're watching a movie and then all of a sudden the characters stop acting and doing things and then just like, wow, we're in this room right now. Also, we are talking. Like, it's too much, man. Like, you got to get with the action. Get with the terror and suspense or whatever, the romance or whatever.
Right. So one of the things that my screenwriting teacher, even said when it came to, and she wrote screenplays as well, was that, show not tell. Like, she hated movies with narration because she's like, that's for books and shit like that. Like, don't tell everybody everything. Why don't you show it by people's actions or by whatever, or because it's easy to have a fucking narrator sit there and give you all this backstory as opposed to show it. So,
yeah.
So, no, I agree with that. So, I mean, from there, I would come up with a kind of an initial, and this kind of, I think, goes into what we were just talking about, but a format initially, like how you want to structure your show as far as, okay, I want to, have a section where I do this and then I do this, or, I mean, and it's all, I think there's no obviously set way that you should do it. I think people just be as creative as possible, I guess, the better. But I think that you should have some kind of, and again, you being anybody, but a kind of format to your show. And sometimes it's good, like, and it depends on your audience, but, like every show or once a week, somebody has like a certain segment that they do or something. But that can get tacky as well. So
it can, but it's also, I find it's really comforting when you listen to a show and you're like, oh, this is the part of the show when Johnson talks about his favorite video game, and I like this part. Like this, I look forward to this specific part. Or even it could even be as small as like when I do my vlog posts on YouTube, I start I start every post with I say, "Hello, friends. This is Shire Dude here," and then I go into it. So it's just kind of like, "Hey, it's me again," like an intro, kind of a quick thing, and I do it every single time. It kind of helps me too, just kind of start off my train of thought on whatever I'm going to talk about for the day. So yeah, kind of getting into the habit of that. Also, another habit thing that you don't actually see in the final product, it's not necessarily or inherently apparent, is the editing of the show. And that can be a show killer. If you want to produce something that's, let's say, an hour long, some people can edit an hour's worth of audio for like 5 hours if you really get into it and you want to take out all the ums and ahs and the pauses, and maybe you want to work on like the compression of your voice a little bit more with like After Effects, or you want to level the volume. Like, all of these things can take a really long time if you give them too much time. Probably the best word of advice I can give for the editing side of things, which that's kind of been my specialty, is you're going to take up, let's see. Any task that you have is going to take up as much time as you allot for it. So if you sit down and you're like, oh, well, I have the rest of the night to edit this, you can actually spend the rest of the night to edit it. But if you sit down and think, okay, I've got to edit this in 15 minutes to half an hour, and whatever I'm done with, I'm going to produce, I'm going to throw it out there, then it's more realistic, and it forces you to find shortcuts for things. It forces you to film or record in a way that lends itself to easier editing too. A really good example of this is Dave Ridley. You're familiar with Dave Ridley videos on YouTube?
Yeah, I actually had him on the show before.
Oh yeah, he's great. He films in a way where he will push record, and then he'll say a sentence with the camera pointed at something that's pertinent to what he's talking about, and then he'll hit stop record, and then he'll push record and say the next sentence, and then hit stop record. It's a really interesting method that he's. I don't know if he started that himself or if he got it from someone else, but I actually use that sometimes myself when I'm doing my vlogs, and that way when you're editing, it's really, really easy. To just go and like each clip is already kind of edited for you. You just throw them together and add on some other stuff, and like throw it in your template or whatever. Having a template is a pretty important thing, especially if you're doing video. Like I have bumpers for Shire Dude videos now. So at the beginning, it's like a musical intro, and it says shiredude.com, and then at the end there's more music, and like the logo appears, and then in between that there's a watermark. So the Shire Dude logo is on all my videos as a watermark, so other people can use the content. Obviously, I don't mind. I'm not like big on IP or whatever, but that way I kind of get some credit if people use my footage elsewhere. So yeah, it's important to have a template too. Just something like a starting point for all your whatever content you're producing. And I don't know how much you wanted to talk about video this evening. I know we've still got some time. Okay. Another thing too is when you're getting into video specifically, that can be a huge time sink and even a huge money sink. When you're spending money on cameras. When you look at a show like, the School Sucks Project show is really professional, and like if you've seen Brett Veinott's studio, it's really like meticulously like designed. Like you could tell he put a lot of time and effort into that studio. For his camera, he just uses he's got like a nanny cam for at least one of his cameras. It's a really cheap camera, and I don't think the camera is really that important for that show. I think because they're talking a lot about education. I think it's more audio based, and so he was really smart to not spring for like a $1,000 camera in every corner of the room. I think you can really overdo it with video. And I think that was one of the problems that we had with Rebel Love Show when I was doing Rebel Love Show is we, and of course there were two of us, so it was a little bit easier to kind of spring money and time on various endeavors. But if we had only focused on the audio, I think the audio of that show could have been a lot better. Probably the content of that show could have been a lot better when I was on. Instead of it kind of turned into me goofing around with the video program and just trying to do new kind of trippy things. I mean, that was fun in its own regard. But, when you put tons more effort into one area of the show, you got to know that that's going to take away the effort that you can put into those other areas of the show. So just, the video, I'm actually kind of going the other way now. I'm, my next endeavor, my next project is going to be audio only. And I think it's going to be pretty strict about audio only for a while. Like I'm not gonna have any cameras running during the show. So I can kind of
problem. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, because I think you were gonna say. Go ahead.
Just no cameras, just so I can focus on the audio, and it's gonna save a lot of money to begin with.
Yeah, so maybe that is a good idea, because I was gonna say, it's not a big deal to have cameras too, and the focus is the radio show, because what you can end up doing is putting, MP3s on all these different sites and applications and whatnot that don't have video, but then you can have video also. But you make a good point that maybe you should focus on the audio and save some money. And then after you do that for a little while and save up some money and focus totally on the audio, then go to video, because as you were saying, you seem to get too caught up in the video part of it and maybe lose some focus on the audio. So that might be a distraction for you initially. And I'm just basing this off of what you were saying. Like you were saying that sometimes, that not that you get I don't know if you were saying like you get nervous or you get just flustered, or I mean you didn't use those words or anything, but you kind of hinted at like you're still kind of when it comes to the audio part of it, still trying to like find your way, kind of, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm
not that I'm saying that I've heard that. I'm just saying I'm serious. I'm just saying from what you're saying. What you said earlier, I'm just basing it off of that. I'm not saying when you were
I'm coming from a video background.
Right.
Like I made movies when I was younger. And
I did totally the same thing. Yeah. I mean, I grew up with a video camera. My high school had a TV studio. We had TV classes. I edited video in high school, not on computers. We had like actual those old video editors where you have two TV screens and it hooks up to the video editor and you have VCRs.
Wow.
Or I think they call them VTRs or something. And I have some of the old video. Unfortunately, one of my tapes got totally erased. I was showing an ex-girlfriend, but I have the raw footage. So what I tried to do was use the Vegas editing studio and redo it with my raw footage.
Oh, cool.
But I didn't totally finish it. So, but yeah, so I totally can relate to that. And then, of course, in college, I didn't do any video editing. We actually cut film, literally. Back then, we were cutting film, like literally taking scissors and the thing and taping it. You actually tape it. I have my film. I did like a 2-minute film or something. I have the actual film still. If I don't know. I can probably get it transferred to video, but why even bother at this point? It's black and white. It was a Bolex camera, 16 millimeter. So yeah, no, I totally understand, and that's why I want to do some things in video as well. I mean, I wrote a whole script for a feature-length movie, but yeah, I mean, definitely, I don't think it would hurt to, get rid of the distraction initially, because there's a difference between, doing just talking and doing a radio show, and I don't know how much you're gonna do by yourself. I'm assuming you'll have guests and stuff like that too. But
definitely, yeah.
But I mean, the parts, you'll have sections that you're doing your introduction by yourself, or you're doing a section by yourself, and it's something that I think you need to get used. Not you again being you, but anybody. It's different, I think. But in some ways, it's easier because nobody can see you, and you can pretend that really that, like, there's people out there listening, but you don't see them, and you're just like. But kind of the same with video. I mean, if you're recording a video, you're not really seeing the people anyway, but that they're seeing you. So
yeah, your face is on the camera.
Right.
And that's a big benefit too with some of the guests that I want to have on. I know a lot of people, even over here, the flashy activists in New Hampshire, they get camera shy, and even though they go out and hold up signs in public and stuff, they will still get camera shy and be nervous. Or like, let's say, they want to do some, I mean, because my project coming up, it's going to be art, it's going to be comedy, it's going to be kind of zany stuff. And, let's say somebody doesn't want to alienate too many people, but they still want to do a funny bit on my show. They can come on my show and do a strange voice or something. They don't have to be themselves. So that's another benefit.
Yeah, definitely. That's the whole thing too with radio. You kind of have more options because nobody can see you in that sense. But it's
I could do something where I'm like several different people in the same sketch. Just doing different voices.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think I did some shit like that before, like where I was fucking around one day. But yeah, I mean, there's positives and negatives because obviously a lot of people keep TV or video keeps attention more than, say, just audio. But at the same time, you can listen to the radio and do all this other shit too.
Yep.
So it gives you flexibility where, hey, I need to do some things. Hey, let me turn on the radio and listen to it while I'm doing other things. So it's a different medium, but really it's in some ways it's the same. It's like if you take Free Talk Live, for example, or you take the Rebel Love Show when you were on it. I mean, you're doing a radio show, but then at the same time you're on camera as well. So where do you draw the line as to, well, yeah, it's a radio show, but it's kind of like a TV show because, and you guys had all those effects going on and stuff like that, which was interesting. And, but I think you definitely, and again, you being anybody, need to perfect your voice and your delivery and all of that. And I still feel like, even after all this time, I have a lot of stuff that I need to work on. And some days are better than others because your mood will affect you. Who your guest is might affect you. You might have a guest where it just goes badly. And I had a guest I fucking hung up on once after getting in an argument with them. I have it posted on YouTube. I wish you could actually see it, but it's just the audio. But, sometimes you just connect better with other people. And from that, you get motivated off of that and you do a better job yourself,
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I try to get to the point where no matter what mood I'm in, when I start the show, I'm in the same upbeat mood, and that hasn't always been the case. When I've been tired, it's affected me, but for the most part, I think I've maintained that for a lot of the shows. But Yeah, I mean, it's something, like I said before, and you have experience, doing it, but you can always get better. That I believe it's something that no matter how talented you are, you need the experience. That, like we talked about off air, that experience is the only thing that is gonna move you along. Simply just having talent, and you have those guys who have those voices like 106.7 and we're here with the news and whatever. The radio voice people, and I don't know that that's necessarily talent. Talent is, I think, something that you are able to think quickly, or you're able to react under pressure, or especially if you're taking calls, or things like that. And those are the things I think you learn too. Like, you learn, what if there's a problem? Like, what if something happens and how do you deal with it? Like, if there's an issue, and how do you deal with an issue, and do you panic or whatever? There's things like that come up as well. But I think the more you plan out, and I definitely think that before each show, I mean, my personally, what I try to do is put together some kind of outline or notes, whether I'm doing an interview. And as I mentioned, when I do an interview, I do a pre-interview and take notes and put together detailed stuff. And I think it makes the interview so much better. And then when I do a show, especially now when I'm doing shows by myself, I detail and outline everything I'm going to talk about for the most part. Now, things are going to come up, and that's a good thing, because, you don't want to sound like it's too organized, where maybe organized is not the right word, but you don't want to sound like a robot, like you're just regurgitating, and that's why I just put it in an outline format or bullet points or whatever. I don't write out what I'm going to say. I just want to make sure we cover this point and this point and this point, and these are the points I want to cover, and this is kind of the order I want to cover them in.
Yeah, and that's like, you don't want to, if you planned structure, like, we need to talk about exactly these things, then you'll kind of you have the problem of where you just get to the point where you're like talking past the other person, and you're not really focusing on it like it's a conversation. Because if you have someone on your show, if you're interviewing, or if you have a co-host or whatever, it should be conversational. It should be like
that's totally different. I think, where if I have a co-host on there, I have bullet points, but it's totally different where I'm talking more about when I'm doing a show by myself. I have to kind of have bullet points, because I can kind of get lost in, okay, I don't have any feedback coming, so it's all me. You know what I mean? So if you're doing it by yourself, I think you definitely need that. But I think you still, because what I used to do is I put together notes, and I shared my notes with that other person, or they had their notes, and then we discussed that way, and kind of, beforehand discussed, okay, kind of what we're going to do, but they added their points in, and I added my points in, and it kind of came together in a positive way. So it depends on, whether you have a guest that you're interviewing, or a co-host, or whatever. And I think it depends on some variables, but I think if you definitely in interviews, I definitely think you should do a pre-interview and know that stuff about, them, and talk to them about what they want to talk about too. It's not one-sided. it's you also say, hey, is there anything you want me to make sure we bring up? Is there anything you want to focus on? Do you want to talk about,
Yeah.
But if it's your show, there's a difference between having a co-host and having a guest too. If you have a guest, it's your show and you want to highlight what you want to highlight. At the same time, you want to give them an opportunity to talk and discuss what they want to discuss. But if it's a liberty-oriented show, you want to kind of cover the liberty-oriented ideas or how that pertains to that guest. Like, say you have a guest on that was beaten by a cop or something. You don't want to present it in a way that's comes off in a socialist sense or something. You know what I mean? You want to present in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I would present it in the way of, okay, you were totally abused by the government. But I talk to them, beforehand, of course, and do pre-interviews and whatever. But I wouldn't want, and maybe it's you pre-interview them and they just don't fit what you're trying to portray on your show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, you really got to do your homework when you have people on your show.
Yeah,
you don't wanna,
definitely.
You don't want to, yeah.
Even, I would say both senses, look up and see what you can find out about them, first of all. But at the same time, talk to them. I don't know if you want to get into equipment because we're kind of, we still have a half hour, or if you want to comment on any of that stuff. But just to summarize, I think, having a clear vision of what you want to do with your show, and I think coming up with a format and doing some planning is the way to go. Now, some people just want to get on the microphone and just say whatever. I don't think personally that that's going to give for the best show that you can do in general. I mean, I think show prep is necessary. I don't know. What are your thoughts on?
Yeah, that's
stuff?
definitely the mark of someone who's doing a really good show is when the prep is seamless. It's when you don't even think about, like, when you're listening to the show, you're not like, oh wow, he must have written all these questions beforehand.
Right.
It's when you're listening to the show and you're like, wow, this is a really knowledgeable guy. Like, he knows all about this topic. And
sorry, not to interrupt, but that's what I mean with an interview. It's kind of gathering the information, and then as you ask them, stuff about them, but stuff comes up, and then you're like, oh, what about that? And you keep asking, you get interested, and then you ask more questions, and you get more into detail. And that's why, I've done interviews that have lasted like almost 3 hours because I've gotten into, everybody has something interesting about them, especially the people that have been on the show, people that are active in the liberty movement or activists, or, I've done something that prompted me to ask them to come on the show. So in that sense, I'm interested in things, and I gather information. I talk to them, get a background, and then I ask them about what I know, but then they give answers, and then you react to their answers as far as maybe they bring up an interesting point, and you want to get more into that, and you want to know more about it, and then it just goes from there. And it kind of, there's only so much. I believe in the planning aspect, but like you said, you made a great point. You want it to seem seamless because things are going to go where they're going to go at the same time. So you should be prepared, I think, but it's still radio, and things are going to go where they're going to go. It's not a medium like film, and I'm talking, fiction. where you have a script and that's what you stick to. It's not that kind of medium at all. And you don't want it to come off like that kind of medium, like it's scripted. Unless, maybe you're doing a commercial or you're doing a skit, like something, you know what I mean? Like if you're putting a skit in there or something like that, then that's fine. But you don't want it to. You want it to come off like it's you just talking to that person. Like you were saying earlier, you're having a discussion with that person, or you're interviewing that person and learning more about them and presenting them to your audience so they can learn more about them.
Yeah, it's almost like you're bringing that person to a party, your guest to a party, and you've got to introduce them properly and get them talking with the rest of your friends, so you it's not really just thinking about the other person or just thinking about your show. It's thinking about who's listening, and that's probably another really important bit of this we should bring up is you gotta ask yourself, who's your audience going to be, who's going to be listening to your show, who do you want to listen to your show? Do you want to do a show for preteen girls, then maybe you should dress like you're from a boy band, or do you want to, do a show where it's going to be, older intellectual liberty people? Then, you got to really do your homework and do some research, stuff like that. Definitely have a focus on your audience.
Yeah, you should definitely look at your market and how to present that and how to market to your audience. Or, that's one thing I probably haven't done the best in, but at the same time, I don't feel like, I want to cater to anybody specific. I just want to come out and say what I feel and what I want to get across and those ideas, and whoever wants to pick up on them. Now, I noticed when I look at the stats, it's like 25 to 34 is where I'm getting all the listeners, and the majority are male too.
Well, you've got the kind of like variety show thing going on. So you got like the standard liberty male demographic,
right?
Tuning in. Yeah.
So I wish I could expand that, but I'm willing to compromise like formats, like to format my show differently is not something I'm against, and I'm not against taking people's advice on, well, maybe if you change your format or had different segments or whatever. But as far as the message and the goal of the show, because the whole reason I do this is to get these ideas out there. Even if I'm only reaching, and when I say reaching, I mean like actually reaching that they're thinking about it and it's changing their opinion or whatever, one or two people, then I'm only reaching one or two people. But at least I'm doing something, and I'm trying my best to get it out there. But yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. You got to look at your market. You got to look at, you got to be entertaining as well.
Sure. Yeah. And another kind of a branch off of this is when you're looking at your market, you got to look at, like where are you going to share your show? A lot of Liberty podcasts, they just kind of post their show on various like audio streaming sites, or like we were talking about these sites last night, like iHeartRadio or Spreaker is one you use.
And really what I think people don't even think about, and neither do I, to be honest, maybe with the exception of Spreaker, is how are people even going to find these shows, and how are they even going to come across them? I mean, there's so many shows out there now. Like Spreaker, I actually paid, I don't know, I think it was like $50 to advertise on Spreaker and to point people to my website, and then it would eventually point them back to Spreaker probably anyway. But yeah, you got to think about that as well. As I think if you want to be successful, and it depends what your mission is too, because, you know, if you have 1,000 friends on Facebook, you know, maybe you could get 50%. I mean, that's probably kind of high, but maybe 20, 30, 40%, maybe. And that would listen to your show. But those are probably people that agree with you anyway. Yeah. And are you really accomplishing anything if you're just having all these people that know who you are listen to your show based on the fact that, you know, they're friends with you on Facebook and part of the Liberty movement? So if you want to reach other markets and other people, like I want to reach anybody who likes talk radio. I mean, really, if I really look at it, I want to reach anybody who's interested in talk radio, even if they hate me, because I listen to a lot of shows. I think I told you this, that I hate. So I can go and talk about them and criticize them and how fucked up they are. So I listen to a lot of shows I hate just because the crazy ideas too that they put out there, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So yeah, I don't care if somebody listens to me because they hate me neither. You know, same thing. I mean, at least they're listening and maybe talking about me, and maybe somebody picks up on that. Yeah. But
I think it's Ian Freeman's always saying either they're talking about you or they're not. So even the haters, if they're talking about you, they're talking about you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's no matter what, I think there's, I guess, no, you know, the saying, there's no bad publicity. So, you know,
sure,
they might mention you to somebody who actually likes you. But yeah, these are all things you got to think about. And you got to think about, I don't think you can focus on all these applications, even though, you know, like I had said, okay, Spreaker automatically posts to like 5 applications, right? Something like that I have it set up to do. I'm not focusing on most of them. My main focus is my website and really Spreaker, but it's good to have them out there in case somebody comes across it. Or if you're somebody who always listens to SoundCloud and you hear about the show and you don't feel like going and signing up for a Spreaker account, not that it costs any money, but maybe you can listen on SoundCloud instead. So you have that option. So I think it's good to be on all these places, but I don't think it necessarily is going to do anything for you. You know, you again being anybody, just because you're on 10 fucking different applications, it doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
People can come across it. I've had people come across like SoundCloud when I got on there. I mean, not a lot, but people have come across it. So it expands your listenership a little, but I mean, I haven't had a lot of people come across it. So, you know, it all depends. And you can work to, again, if you want to pay each fucking application extra money to highlight your show. But I think when it comes down to it, and it's hard for me to believe any of these people that are that big didn't at some point do some paid advertising. I can't fathom that. Because unless it's all their friends listening to them, because a lot of it turns into a popularity contest as well. And you don't really want that. I mean, I guess some people do, but I don't want just like all friends listening, because what does that really accomplish? Unless it's friends that maybe disagree and they can listen and maybe it will change their views. But you want to reach people that you don't know, that have different views, that, you know, are interested in listening to talk radio. And so that's really my focus, is to reach anybody who's interested in talk radio and internet radio. And and keeping it pure by staying on the internet so I can say whatever the fuck I want to say. And if I want to say fuck, I can say it. And if I want to say, fuck the police or whatever, I can say that. And I don't have to worry about, maybe I have to worry about the Fusion Center people coming after me or the police, but I don't have to worry about, getting thrown off the air or something like that. Now, at the same time, I don't make any money off it, but I'm still, my main goal wasn't to make money in the first place. It'd be nice to get to that point, but it was never my goal anyway.
Yeah. I guess, you should have goals as far as, like the success that you want. Like what's the best case scenario for whatever show you want to start? Is it to have 100,000 listeners listening to you regularly? Is it to make money? That's something that you should decide right away. Oh man. Are you ever going to make money, or is this just a hobby? I would like to make money for what I do. And I tend to, my model so far for Shire Dude is I tend to just do Shire Dude productions for free. And the money that I make is I show, this collection of productions is kind of my portfolio, and I show that to people, and then they hire me to do like freelance video editing work, filming work. Sometimes I've even done voice work for people, and they'll pay me, so I get kind of like short-term projects. Because all the stuff you learn with this hobby is, of course, valuable. It's actually a lot more valuable than you think. I make like almost twice as much with my video editing and videography than I do at my current day job. So it's pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet. I mean, especially here in New Hampshire, where there's a bunch of Liberty people who love filming things, but really are just terrible at editing them, or they just don't want to actually produce content. They like the camera thing, but that's about it. So there's a pretty big market.
Yeah, and that's definitely a cool thing to be able to do. And
yeah. Have you ever considered? I don't know if you have one. It's a Patreon. You know what Patreon account?
No.
It's more for like artsy or creative types, which is why I've looked into it. But you could use it for what you do. I think I want to say Daryl W. Perry has one for like his news and such.
What is it? What does it do?
It's like a website where it's a subscription model. So it's like a website it's like an automated AMP program. For like Free Talk Live has the Advertise, Market, Promote program, where viewers or listeners subscribe for you to be publishing content, and then they get like bonuses. They get like bonus content, or maybe you have, like a special, like they get the content ahead of time or something like that. It's really nifty. Patreon is the kind of the way to just automate that entire process of the subscribers collecting payments, and then delivering whatever kind of goodies you want to deliver.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
but that's more like for like a subscription based.
Yeah, I think
services?
you can do like just flat donations, but it's obviously meant for like subscription. Like if someone wanted to subscribe to Nonpartisan Liberty for All, then they'd be able to do it through Patreon. So I don't know. I think it's kind of an interesting model. I definitely want to try it for what I'm doing with this
I'll
upcoming.
definitely look at it. I mean, I finally set up PayPal on my website. Of course, no one donated anything, which is fine. I'm not one of those people that are yelling at people you must donate to me because I put all this time into, this show, and which other
I just set up
people have
PayPal
done.
for Shire Dude. And like, I didn't even think to set up PayPal. I just figured I just figured all my viewers would send me Dogecoins, but
well, probably a lot don't have any, so
yeah,
they're like,
exactly. I got an email from one of my viewers saying, "Oh, hey, can I pay you in not Dogecoins?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't think about that," you know?
yeah, PayPal's pretty easy to set up.
Yes.
So I was able to do that, which is cool, but I haven't gotten any money. But I mean, you know,
At least it's there, you know?
yeah, and I'm still in the stages of I want to build a fucking network is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I know it's really hard to do, and there's not many people who have successful 24-hour networks that actually make money off them. You know, I don't know anybody that does. I actually came across some when I was looking through YouTube trying to do some research, some radio station in Atlanta that does 24/7. The guy says that he makes money. It's all internet based.
Yeah.
And he plays music, but he obviously doesn't have a the blanket licenses that radio stations have. He plays music of people who are unsigned or
Creative Commons music.
Sort of, well, I guess it would be. I don't know that they put it on Creative Commons, but they're trying to make it so they'll play their music.
Copyright free
they don't
stuff,
give a
yeah.
fuck. Yeah, so it's all these rap groups and whatever. So,
That's great.
He says he makes money. I don't know. But he did a video on his setup, which isn't really all that sophisticated, to be honest. And speaking of that, we only have 15 minutes left, so I don't know if you want to get into briefly get into equipment. We can talk a little about that if you want.
Sure. Man, I feel like we could do like an entire other show about equipment, to be honest.
I know. But we can just briefly go into it. Of course, the minimum that you need is just a USB. Like I said, I started, USB mic, headphones, and a computer. And then just a application to, depending on what you want to do. I mean, if you want to broadcast live, it's different compared to if you just want a podcast. But either way, if you just want a podcast, you could just have a website and just put them up there and do it that way. Or if you want to do it live, you could do both. Like Spreaker will store your podcast and also broadcast live for you. So will like most of the, applications.
Yeah, even YouTube nowadays, you can broadcast things live on YouTube, which is how we used to do it on Rebel Love Show. I don't know if they still do it that way, but we would broadcast live and then the video automatically posts when it's done. So we just had that entire video like ready to go with all its tags and whatnot, and then the description in the description section, and then people could watch us live and then or watch us afterwards, and that's free. That's a free service. If you just want to do audio and then post it after editing it, I'd recommend Audacity as a program. It's a free program.
Yeah, I've used Audacity to edit, but I pretty much don't because I do the show live. Yeah. I did at first. I edited, any spaces in between and the ums and all that shit. And I started doing that. But that's when I was staying up till like 2:00 in the fucking morning, editing after and then posting and going through all this shit. And I'm like, I can't do this. And that's why I even, cut my show down to 2 hours so I get enough sleep. I mean, I get up at 5:45 and go to work. So, I mean, I put a lot of time into this. Plus, I, prepare for the show and all that shit. So, plus, I like the fact that it's just, it is what it is. It's a live show, so why not just, hey, here's the live show that I did, and, if I fucked up on it, I fucked up on it. Plus, I want to listen back to it and hear what I fucked up, but I guess I could always make a copy. But I think if it's a podcast, if people want to edit it, I think that's fine. But I'd rather just, I do a live show, put the live show out there, and my fuck ups are my fuck ups, and
sure, yeah, and own it, and then you imagine how much time you're saving each episode.
Yeah, editing audio can take forever, even just if you're editing out the spaces, because you can just look through the audio and see, okay, here's a straight line and cut it out and whatever. But it's still like a 3-hour show. it just takes a while. You're like going through there. Then Audacity takes forever, like to kind of reprocess the file and save it. And, so it saves a lot of time, but it's not just the time. It's just, it's just more real, I guess.
Sure.
And if it was a podcast, maybe I would do that. But it is a podcast too. But I mean, if it wasn't, it's basically live on tape. So here's my live show on tape is really what it is as a podcast. But to go a little, just real quick into some of the advanced stuff, that's when you can, you get into the biggest thing, of course, using the XLR mics and getting a mixer. And I got a Behringer, I can't even say it. It's a, Zena something? Xenex. And, it's similar to actually the one in Mike Dean's video. It's a little smaller, though, but it's still pretty big. Where
that's Michael W. Dean, right? Freedom Dean's?
Where
okay.
I have like 6, like I was saying, I could put off air 6 mics, and I can hook up, my Mix Minus. I have an input for my phone, so my phone goes right through my mixer. The computer is hooked directly up, and my setup is I have 2 computers. One is strictly for Spreaker. So one of the computers, the mixer, actually has a USB output, and the USB output goes right into the computer and records directly from the mixer. And that's all I use that computer for. Then my other computer I use for Skype, and I use for any music. And then that's the computer with the Mix Minus, which is basically set up so you don't hear an echo of yourself. A lot of people record directly from Skype. I've never done that. I wouldn't do that. It doesn't make sense to me. Then at the same time, I also have hooked up to the mixer this H4n as a backup. In case Spreaker gets fucked up, I can replace it with that file. So I have both of those going, and really I should be using the H4n to replace the Spreaker file because it's even better. But the Spreaker file is sufficient. The audio is still great, and it's good enough. So
yeah, that's something that is incredibly important, having a backup for your audio in case something goes wrong, because oh man, things would go wrong that you would never even imagine when you're doing, especially when you're doing a longer show like this. Like, let's say you're doing the show, and like if you have a cat, your cat walks on some wire somewhere and kills your audio, your main audio, within the first 15 minutes, and you don't notice, then you've just done a lot of work for nothing. Like you might as well have unplugged the mics and talked into a corner.
Or if, like I said, if the computer crashed or something, fortunately the internet crash didn't, crash my Spreaker.
Yeah.
Or, something happens with your computer. So even though this is the H4n is technically, it's kind of like a computer in that, it's like a digital type machine, but it's not a computer. It could crash as well, is what I'm saying. But, the odds of both of them crashing is probably not going to happen. But yeah, I think having a backup is a positive thing. I have a compressor hooked up that is hooked up to the mixer. So it goes through the compressor first, then goes into the mixer. I have a power conditioner, which supposedly the purpose of that is supposed to be, how wires sometimes can make sounds when you plug things in. Like, it's supposed to help with that, so you don't hear any like
humming or something.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't hear any of that. So I plug everything into there. It's not that complicated a setup. I mean, of course, now after I know, after I set it all up, I mean, I guess when I was trying to set it up, I was like, well, I don't have this fucking cord, so I got to order this. And there's a lot of different types of, input and output stuff that you need and wires and all of that shit for things like the mix minus and the way I hooked up the phone. I needed special cords. The way I hooked up, I have a effects processor that I'm not really using, but the way I hooked that up, so there's a lot of, once you get it hooked up, it's all good, but there's a lot of hookup. And then the other thing that can happen is from the bending of the wires. Like one of my wires is already starting to become the wires wearing away, the plastic part, or not the plastic, but the rubber, where you can actually see the wire. So you got to be careful of that, or bending the wires too much. So you got to be conscious of how you set everything up, and I mean, when I say how you set everything up, I mean like where your placement and how you have it on the table you use, and all of that stuff. Plus you want, you don't want wires to be too long, because it has I guess the longer the wire, the bigger chance of it could, make more noise because it's going through a longer path. Mm-hmm. So things like that come up as well. And there's some good videos, even though I'm not a big fan. Michael Dean's video is pretty good. I got a lot out of that. And just real quickly with the mic, I got 2 shock mounts, which help, if you bang the table or whatever, it's supposed to help with the mic from, making any noises or whatever. It's like you have that in the scissor arm. Sorry, it was what I was thinking about too. But the shock mount is the thing that surrounds it and connects to the scissor arm, which is the arm that you can move back and forth.
And that's like a mic stand that clips onto a table?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And then you have the pop filter that, for your and shit like that you put over it. So, and then I have other mics where I have another scissor arm that I have a mic hooked up to that same mic that Michael Dean recommended. And then I have 2 mic stands as well that I have mics on. I probably bought about 6 of those fucking mics because I bought them for other people as well.
Nice.
Some of the people that were on my show, I ended up buying them for, and I bought one for my brother too, and I don't think he fucking used it. But those range anywhere from 50 to 70. It kept going up. Like the first one I got was like $49.99, and then I went back and got another one, and it was like 60, and then one was 70, and then one was 50 again. So, but it's definitely affordable. So, and with the mixer, I mean, to me, I didn't want to get a little small mixer and then later get a bigger one. I mean, I think my mixer was like 270 or something. And I wanted to get a mixer that I'm going to have long term. I didn't want to, let me start off with this little fucking mixer and then buy a bigger one later. It's like, let me go all out if I'm going to do it and get a pretty good one. I didn't get the most expensive one, but I got one that was up there.
Yeah, I'm still not quite set on what kind of mixer I'm gonna get. I know it's gonna have to have a lot of channels because I want to get really creative with my audio inputs and outputs and whatnot. But yeah, the pop filter, that's important. I've got a pop filter on my Yeti right now, and it's keeps it also keeps spit out of the microphone. That's important. You don't want a bunch of spit in your microphones. And then you were talking about the scissor arms that clip onto the table. That is, I think it was Michael W. Dean who recommended not clipping your microphones onto the table that you're doing the show off of. Like if your computer's on the table, you don't want your microphone on that same table. Which right now I'm just using a Blue Yeti, so obviously it's sitting on the table in front of me, so there's really nothing you can do about that. But if you do have a stand, he was saying you should have some sort of like a side table or an end table that's not connected to the table that's in front of you. That way, even banging on the table, like there's no chance that the microphone is going to like move or have any sound or anything like that. So, I mean, you do have the shock mounts to kind of get past that. But for the people who maybe you don't want to bother buying a shock mount, or the people who want to be extra cautious, definitely put them on an end table, or you could just have them stand, like on their own kind of mic stand, like a tripod sort of thing. Which I think that's the setup that I'm going to go for with my show coming up. With that,
could you hear
we
that?
didn't get too
My
much.
chair keeps making noise. Sorry about that.
I heard, yeah. I didn't want to get too much into the content of the show coming up. I don't want to have too many spoilers, but it's going to be an interesting kind of format. We were talking about format earlier, and it's going to be pre-recorded bits that I do, like sketches or things like that, and I'm going to introduce those live and then play them on the air. So it's a format that I don't think I've seen in the Liberty Movement. It's like people like, oh, here's this little thing, here's this next thing that I'm doing, and I can't think of a single show where I've seen that on. So I don't know. Hopefully people enjoy it. I think people are, and it'll all be on shiredude.com, and you should definitely go there or like me on Facebook, get updates on this thing, this crazy thing that I'm building.
So definitely go to shiredude.com. That is all the time we have for tonight. Check out the events on 420, on 11/15, and what was the other one on the 22nd? Go to shiredude.com and
it's
get
all there.
The further information on that. It definitely should be some interesting stuff to watch. So thanks again for coming on, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about when it comes to equipment and all that stuff. So sorry we only got to so much, but it was fun kind of discussing that anyway. So thanks everybody. I'll be back tomorrow, and go again, shiredude.com and nonpartisanlibertyforall.com.
But at the end of the day, each and every member should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer, the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resist. We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to take the law, we enforce it. But at the end of the day, each and every member should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer, the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is March 23rd, 2016, and we're coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you for listening to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights, Tuesday through Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, and you can listen live on Spreaker.com and nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. And to the archives, all the archives we've ever done are on Spreaker. So if you want to go back to even the first show, you can get that on Spreaker. You can also still get, I think, up until I got off of Blog Talk Radio, you could get it there too, but might as well just go to Spreaker. It's better to go there because it has all of our shows up to now, because I'm on Spreaker and I transferred everything. And we also have archives on YouTube, so you can listen to it there. It posts immediately after the show to YouTube, Twitter, SoundCloud, Tumblr, as well as I believe we're on Stitcher as well. I had an issue with Stitcher and I fixed it. So I think Stitcher's working also. I don't know. That's on an RSS feed, so I don't know if it posts immediately after the show. But all the other applications are linked to Spreaker. And we'll actually be talking about this later in the show, because tonight we're going to be talking all about how to start a Liberty podcast. And that, of course, is just based on my experience and the experience of Shire Dude, who will be joining us later in the show, who's done a few different shows and has experience with other people's studios as well, and has seen, being in New Hampshire, everybody has a podcast. And he will be joining us also to give his opinion, and he is going to start up his own solo show, from what I understand, at some point also. So we will be getting into all the different applications and all of that fun stuff. So we promote here on Nonpartisan Liberty for All, we promote the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom, as well as exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force and violence. And if I see fucking one more story on ISIS, and some idiot congressman said, oh, this was really an attack on America because where they were, they went to a place where Americans go, in Belgium. Okay, because you mean to tell me that there are supposedly there's all these Muslim terror cells here, right? That 4 of them or 5 of them can't get together without them finding out and just shoot a place up? Really? Why does that not happen? And it's not because of the fucking NSA. It's not. It's because it's a bunch of bullshit. First of all, it's being run by the CIA. I think there are real terrorists out there who have legitimate gripes. I mean, half of ISIS, well, I can't say for sure half. I know a percentage of ISIS is just doing it for the money. I mentioned before, I've seen interviews where they said, why are you part of ISIS? They don't give a fuck about the jihad part of it or the hate America. They're like, hey, I need some fucking money. I'm doing it to get paid. And that was straight out the fucking guy's mouth. So how many other people are doing it for the same reason? And there's just so much shit about ISIS. We've talked about it before. We'll probably talk about it more a little tomorrow and how it relates to the show. But we're going to talk about how the U.S., I kind of changed the show topic for tomorrow. I've been pushing this topic off regarding the police, and we haven't talked a lot about the police and going beyond killings and all the other stuff that they do. And I really want to be prepared for it, and I feel like it's a very important show, and I haven't really put enough time into it, so I keep moving it forward. But I did do some research into East Germany, and it seems like in some ways the U.S. is worse. Now, of course, you're not going to, well, who knows, but supposedly you're not going to get shot for, I mean, there's no wall yet, but you know, who knows when the wall's there, you'll get shot for jumping the wall to get to Mexico, to get out of the United States. They want to, of course, build a big wall, not just Trump, other people as well. And there's a bill that's been passed, I think, in 2006. People forget about the fact that you're going to have Border Patrol all over there, which is going to create more of a police state. And they're going to keep you in just as much as they're going to keep people out. So at some point, you might want to get the fuck out of here. And unfortunately, there's just really nowhere to go. You could go to a place that he's lucky I didn't run into him again, because he totally manipulated it and made fun of me and all this shit. Not that I do anything, but I probably would have fucking yelled at him and scared the shit out of him or something, because he was just a little fucking tiny kid. But it in the big scheme of things, I mean, now it doesn't really mean much. That was what 6-7 years ago now. So at that time, though, I thought about doing some kind of political radio because I would watch these news channels and I would just yell at my fucking TV no matter who I was listening to, because I never believed in Democrats and Republicans, and they all contradicted themselves and they were all full of shit and it was the same bullshit. And I would say at that point, if you were to classify me as something, I was just a normal libertarian or something. And I didn't really get into all the other stuff just because a lot of it, to be honest, was I was busy trying to meet girls and that took up a lot of time, and I would just go out on the weekends and drink and try to meet girls and whatever. And but I thought about doing a radio show back then, but I just never did it. So I wanted to do some form of activism, but things like protests and civil disobedience, which it's fine, people that do it, and I support whatever people do. I don't believe in just saying, hey, arrest me, doing something and then, hey, arrest me, and not in actually letting them arrest you, whether you want to run or you want to defend yourself. And I understand not defending yourself. And I've been in situations where obviously I didn't defend myself neither, but just to be like, okay, you can arrest me and be cooperative after you're disobeying. I don't get that, because you're not fully disobeying. At least bring it to, like I said, at least get away or do something where they don't know it's you so you can get away with it. But if it gets a lot of media attention, and I mentioned this when I was talking to Shire Dude a couple nights ago, that I can see a point there because it shows people how ridiculous the state is. And that's really the point. But a lot of it doesn't even get any attention anymore because people that are getting murdered don't get any attention. So it's not a lot of civil disobedience unless it's a huge amount of people. But I mean, 1 or 2 people doing something, it's not going to really impact anything, except it's going to put you in jail or put you just in the court system and bullshit to deal with. I do believe in non-compliance, but to back it by self-defense. But anyway, I wanted to do something, and of course, having a background in media and wanting to do something like radio, and radio was immediate. So first I thought about doing YouTube videos, and I actually started to do one and had my fiance film it, and then we never finished it. So we had done that, or started to do that, but I didn't actually, end up finishing it. I did film I gave a presentation to a Tea Party, which they could care less about the police and how they are militarizing and murdering people and all that. And nobody really seemed to care because, all they do is support police. And essentially, I thought, I was looking at, I believe it was Blog Talk Radio, but other sites as well. And I thought, well, let me try this. And Shire Dude has just called in, so let me bring him on. I want to kind of finish this, but it will only take me a couple minutes. So let me bring him on and all I got to do, I'm like, let me bring him on. I'm like, I already connected him. I just got to turn up his fucking, his fader here.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Great. How you doing?
Okay, and it's great, of course, to have you on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back on. It's been a minute since I've been on Nonpartisan Liberty for All.
Well, it's also been a minute since I have, because I just came back this week too. So
Yeah.
that's partially why, because I was off like 3 weeks.
Yeah. Wow.
My mother was here, not last week, but no, was it last week? Did she leave? No, I came back last week, right? Yeah. So the week before she was here, and then I took 2 weeks off before that. Just to get a break and just, stressful shit, whatever. So I was just telling my history. So let me just finish this real quick. And the only reason I wanted to get into this is because I knew you weren't going to call in till about 7:30. So this was my, what I had to talk about for the first half hour. But I initially got into some other shit, like how they can't stop talking about ISIS, and it's just such bullshit and all of that. And I don't want to rehash that, so whatever. Because I was starting to say how we're actually going to have a semi-positive show today. Something that's not depressing or that makes you angry or whatever. Because usually every show has something that's going to make somebody angry, including myself, that's going on, or depressed, or feel like, they have no options or whatever. And then I started kind of getting into ISIS because they mentioned some bullshit on the news, and, is it really an attack on Americans? Because where it happened, they knew a bunch of Americans would be there. Some senator said that. And I always want to say, quote unquote, liberty movement. So to have them, to know them and have them actually come to my house and come in my studio, it's something that makes me feel somewhat accomplished, even though, I'm not getting as many listens as I'd like and things like that. And I don't think I'm anybody, I'm nobody special when it comes to, internet radio or anything, but to have a lot of these people that have come on the show, some of them have come on because of other people, but some of them have actually come on because I asked them to, and then they came on again because they liked coming on the show, or they thought I did a good interview, or they had respect for me. So that is, I think, the one thing that I can take some pleasure in, knowing that, well, I'm not getting all of these views and listens that some people are getting, because I think it's a lot of it's a popularity contest, to be honest. And I'm somebody who keeps to myself for the most part. One of the reasons is just that, the way I grew up, pretty much everybody fucked me over because that's what they do. And to have the respect of some of these people in the liberty, quote unquote, liberty community is a positive thing. So, and I often forget about that. I sometimes, I honestly do get down on myself or something. Like I look at a show and like, okay, well, only this amount of people listen to it or whatever. And I realized that it's not just, talent is one part of it, and doing a good show. And of course, I constantly try to get better. I'm not where I need to be. I need to continue to improve. But it's not just about that. I could be the best Liberty podcaster out there as far as my delivery, my content, and still not get to where some other people are at. Because there's certain things that I think factor into that, there's marketing involved. There's people that put on personas to market themselves. And I come out and just, be myself, and I say what the fuck I think. And I'm not going to compromise that, whether that helps or hurts me. But I'm not going to put on some fucking persona neither, just to get attention, or to try to be more controversial to get attention, or kiss up to people and act fake and then go and talk a bunch of shit about them behind their back, like some people I know in Las Vegas. So anyway, we'll be talking about not that specifically, but the marketing aspect. And that was something that I always had issues with, getting the show out there. And yes, there's social media, and that helps a lot. But at the same time, you know, I always kept my Facebook. When I got on Facebook in the first place, which I really didn't want to because of the whole fact that you're giving the government all your information, I got on it because my cousins were like, hey, we can talk on Facebook. I'm like, okay. So I kept my friends at a minimum because I don't want people I don't know looking at pictures and knowing my business and all of this shit. So it pretty much stayed that way until I basically turned my page into all it is the show and activism and posting articles about the government. Now my fiance always copies me or tags me and, you know, stuff. And that's the only shit you're going to see that is personal. Everything else, I mean, this stuff is personal, like from me, but I mean, it's always about the same thing. It's about the government. It's about the police. It's about things that are going on. So I don't post anything outside of that. But you'll see a bunch of posts that she put on there, and, you know, what can I do? I'm not going to delete them. So I ended up getting to a point where I accepted anybody as a friend and went out and tried to network more, but I was starting from way behind, you know, where people already had thousands of friends over the years, and I had like 40 because, again, I would only accept friendships from people I know pretty well or know enough where I don't mind that they see this stuff. So that kind of hurt. And then you see people with 2,000 friends, and obviously they're not friends with these people, nor do they talk to them all the time, because you can't physically be friends with that many people. But some people are out there putting on a fake persona, acting like they're, you know, super activists or whatever, and that they do all of this shit, which is easy when you don't have a job, and get a lot of attention for it, where I have a different personality, and I'm not the type of person to... One, I'm not a fake person. And two, as I said before, I mean, you know, I'm not going to sit there and act like I like these people that I don't. And if people don't like me, then they don't like me. If they don't like the show, then they don't like the show. And that's how it is. But anyway, just to give a little background on before Shire Dude, or a little more, I guess I gave some background there, but a little more before Shire Dude comes on. So I started, it will be 2 years in April. So I've been doing the show almost 2 years now. And I've had a lot of ups and downs, especially from Blog Talk Radio to Spreaker. For some reason, people didn't take to that, well, when I say take to that, they didn't follow that I moved or got the information, or because Facebook also, you know, you miss all these posts, you have all these people that you follow and whatnot. So I had some success on Blog Talk Radio. I had a show with 700 people. That was because Pete Air was on. I had weeks where every day it was at least 100 listeners. And then I've had shows where I've had 20. So it's been a lot of ups and downs. It depends on the show. It depends on the promotion, you know, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly what causes all these people to listen to the show. So recently I had a show that over 300 people listened to. It was just about Making of a Murderer. So I would assume that the reason was because it was about Making of a Murderer and people were so interested in that series, which was a series on Netflix about a guy who was arrested for sexual assault, served like 18 years. Then they proved he was innocent. And then I think a couple years later, he was arrested for murder, and now he's in jail for murder, claiming that he's innocent, which I believe he is. So I did a show about that. I didn't know how big it was. So I did the show because I happened to watch the series and had an opinion that I think the police fucking killed her, the woman that he was accused of killing. But I didn't realize how big it was. And then I realized that obviously the topic and the title of your show is going to affect the amount of listeners. But at the same time, I need to stay consistent with what I'm doing, because essentially when I started out, really I wanted to, I went to protest. I went to some Tea Party meetings, which maybe like 4, which were really bullshit to me. I'm not a group type person, and I don't agree with their values neither. But I wanted to check them out. They did have some good speakers. They had somebody on Agenda 21 that I totally agreed with. And then they bring in the head of the Republican Party of Nevada who's spouting all this fucking bullshit. And I'm like, this is about it for me. And then I had come there once to see one of the radio hosts was speaking, and I met him before, and I was just curious what he was going to say. And I got there when they were praying. So the lady wouldn't let us go in and told us to be quiet. And I'm like, whatever, fuck you. And I left. I don't think I said fuck you to her, but I'm just like, basically in my head, I'm like, fuck you. So anyway, I got to a point where I saw all of these different types of applications online where you could start your own radio show. It was pretty cheap. Not a lot of you didn't need a lot of investment. And I have a background in, my bachelor's is in film. I used to rap. I used a 4-track recorder, and I used to record. I had an old program from like 2002 that I, played keyboard on and then rapped over. Not that I know how to play keyboard. I mean, it was kind of just doing it on my own and kind of learning, what sounds good, and I can't read music or anything like that, but I think I came up with some okay beats. And I mean, it wasn't great, but the technology at that point, it was there, but what I had was probably a cheaper version of it. So I used my point being that I used recording programs. I used actual machines like a 4-track recorder, which is similar to a mixer in that it has all the same type knobs and faders and things like that. So I had a little experience with that, and of course the microphone and microphone levels, and I already had a microphone, XLR, because of course back then that's all that would connect to a 4-track recorder. You didn't have USB, and most people didn't have computers, and if they did, they had I take that back. It depends what time you're talking about. I guess I'm talking about like late 90s, mid to late 90s, where that's when everything, started, where the internet started to build up and things like that. So it was essentially, I think the first 4-track recorder I had was in 1994. So anyway, I had some background, but I was far from an expert or anything like that, but I knew enough as far as maybe not enough, but enough to get started, essentially. So what I did was, for a while, I thought about it, and I wanted to do radio years before that. I was actually on this fucking stupid-ass radio show of this kid, my friend's cousin, who was a wannabe Howard Stern, and essentially re-edited the whole fucking thing that I was on, and I was on it totally wasted. I drank like a bottle of vodka, and he maybe is better in some areas but worse in others, and maybe doesn't enforce their laws, but it's all the same shit because they're all under governments. Somebody said this, and I had said this before they did, and not that they got it from me or anything, because they don't listen to me, but that if it was some other country, I don't knock the United States for who they are. It's the government. And if there was another country who was more powerful, they'd be doing the same shit the United States is doing. It doesn't matter who the country is. It's just like it doesn't matter who the president is. If they have that much power and money and a military that has all these weapons and is that powerful, it doesn't matter who the country is. They're going to be doing the same shit. So it's not the United States per se that's the problem. It's government and it's power. And why people can't put that together, I don't know. But it's obvious. So I forgot who made that statement, but they made a statement like, yeah, if it was another country who had the power of the United States, they'd be doing the same thing. And you look throughout history and you can see it as well. So, fortunately tonight, sorry, I was just thinking about, I want to get off the topic because I was going to say that we're going to have an actual show that is somewhat positive, and not a negative, wanting to leave the country or be depressed or realize that you're nothing but a slave to the government or whatever. That we were, and we are, going to do a show that is just a show about podcasts. So, of course, the motivation for the podcast comes from that, because we are going to talk specifically about Liberty Podcast, not any other type. And I'm not really familiar with other types of podcasts. And there's also one of the things I talked about before, and I talked about it with Brian Sovereign of Sovereign Tech. He does a podcast about technology and things like that, which relates very easily to freedom because of spying and things to try to block spying and things like that. And I had him on the show. I actually had him in the studio with his significant other, Stephanie Murphy, and she actually gave me a nice compliment about the studio. I don't remember the exact words, but it was like something to the effect of, compared to a lot of studios, it's pretty nice and put together. And I'm totally paraphrasing because I'm more than paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly what she said. But she did compliment the studio, which from her, somebody who's now a voiceover actress and has done a bunch of her own shows, that's a big compliment to say, I mean, what does it really mean? I just got information from other people and kind of put my studio together, and I'm kind of a neat freak when it comes to my studio, so it's nice. And the way I designed, I have a L-shaped table and stuff like that, and I have a nice futon-like couch. Actually, the futon is pretty cheap, but I put like blankets and pillows on it, like pillows, so you could sit with your back against a pillow on top of a blanket. And I think that's where they had sat So I made it as comfortable as possible, and I have we'll get into this later, but point being that, you know, it's not like, oh, I'm a genius, I created this great studio. It's just from learning from others. And I mean, I obviously I pick up things quick, and that's kind of the whole reason why I have the job I do, and I even am successful at all. I mean, not that I'm not that successful, but I'm able to pick things up pretty quick, and especially when it comes to systems and technology and things like that. But at the same time, it's not like it takes a genius to put together a fucking studio. You can go on YouTube and view videos, which I did, and then kind of filter out what you like and do research at the same time. But it's all out there. So it's not like it just came in my head and oh, this is how you do everything. I mean, obviously, I did my own research on everything, and the research is pretty easy to do because it's all out there. But that was a nice compliment coming from her, and it was a pleasure actually to have them here and to say, to, you know, when it comes to the quote unquote, I guess, liberty movement, you know, to have them actually be willing to come to my house, because my studio is in my house, and do a show live from my studio was great. You know, that is something that it's like, and I don't look at them this way like I'm in awe or anything like that, because, and it's not a knock on them, I'm just not like that in general. You know, when I was younger, I was. But it's kind of like having a semi-celebrity in the sense of when it comes to podcasting and internet and freedom radio. And they were on Free Talk Live on Sundays, they hosted. So, you know, they're a pretty big deal in the liberty movement, and